Welcome to Rowling Studies. This is the podcast of the Hogwarts Professor. My name is Nick Jeffrey. I'm a writer at Hogwarts Professor, and I am joined today with
Dr. John Granger, the Hogwarts Professor himself. It is funny, Nick, when you say you're a writer at Hogwarts Professor. I love that. We have a pretty small staff of dedicated writers here, Evan Willis and Elizabeth Baird Hardy and Nick. But what a fellowship it is.
So this is our second episode looking at the whole canon of Rowling's works. Today is a Christmas-themed episode, so we're recording this actually between the Eastern and Western Feast of the Nativity. This should be released before the new year, and we are going to be covering the Christmas Pig.
Yeah, I hope this is an annual event, discussion of the Christmas Pig. I know you feel this way, Nick. I hope our listeners will as well, that this may be the most important single work that Rowling has written. And it certainly deserves repeated visits and explorations. There's no way we're going to talk about everything you can say about the Christmas Pig in a single podcast. Anyway, let's jump into this. I can't wait.
So this is episode 2 of the Rowling Studies, where we cover the whole corpus of Rowling's published works. And this is a seasonal episode, so we are recording this in the Christmas season. This should be going up on the website before the new year, and we will be taking a look at the Christmas Pig. And John, what a joy it was actually to reread this. So this is my first reread of Christmas Pig since it was published, 2 Christmases ago?
Yes.
So I think this would be great to make a seasonal podcast or a seasonal exploration into what must be one of her key works, certainly in recent years.
Yes, there's when people ask me what is Rowling's best work, I'm coming from the Shed perspective, and from the Shed perspective, Rowling's best work is Deathly Hallows. Because it brought all of the Hogwarts saga together in a spectacular finish, and it included so many key elements: the alchemy, the ring, everything was brought to a great climax in Deathly Hallows. A book that could have been the greatest disappointment in literary history turned out to be a triumph, and that was also a great relief to me, as you can imagine. But anyway, that after that, I think Troubled Blood has to be considered her next best book because of all the things that it does, especially with this stuff with Spencer and the Fairy Queen, that she basically retells that in the model. The structural stuff, structural artistry there was unreal. Then Christmas Pig. And Christmas Pig, maybe more than Deathly Hallows and Troubled Blood, I think, because it's so much briefer, it's so much more a crystallization of everything that she does, and it doesn't have any dependent parts. Like you really can't understand Deathly Hallows without the previous 6 books, and you in that series, and you can't really understand the genius of Troubled Blood, I think, without the context now of both the books before it and the books after it. I think it qualifies as really the pivot of the 10-book series. And maybe it's simply in contrast to just how bad I think Ink Black Heart was. But that Christmas Pig as a standalone is the book that I recommend to people when they say, I don't have much time. I've never read J.K. Rowling. I really have this prejudice that she's little better than Enid Blyton. What can I read to introduce myself to who you think is one of the most important authors of our time? And I say Christmas Pig. One, it's funny. There's laugh out loud moments there. There's engagement. You're right there with the story. There's all the intertextuality or literary illusion you could possibly want. But really, there's the four levels of imaginative experience and story, really of knowledge, that Rowling hits with her symbols, her hermetic artistry. I mean, it's from the Shed point of view, this is the peak. Now you're the Lake guy on staff. What is the Lake guy, think of? Is it in the top 5 of Rowling work in terms of
in terms of life illusions? I talk about life and literature as the two big inputs into Rowling's inspiration, which is her lake. And in terms of life input, certainly in terms of self-avowed input, so what Rowling has herself said, this is come from my experience, this has come from my life, all of the things. This is her most biographically indebted book.
Even more than Casual Vacancy.
In terms of what she has herself admitted, yes. I think what we can infer, no. So Casual Vacancy is her unacknowledged autobiography. I mean, so much certainly seems to have come from her life and her experiences within that book. I think less so in Christmas Pig, but it's also on a different scale. You need to look at the tiny things. You need to look at the lost habits. You need to look at the lost items and think about where that fits into the jigsaw of her life. She's mentioned so much. She's mentioned the blue bunny. She's mentioned the earrings. In the acknowledgements, which, John, as you know, when I judge a book, I go to the acknowledgements first, and if it's a really good set of acknowledgements, I know I'm in for a good book. In the acknowledgements, she has said, all of the inhabitants of the land of the lost, all of those things in capital letters, that they are mine, they are my family's, they are our possessions.
Yeah, and
fascinating book.
The beginning and the end of that acknowledgments page is so important. In Christmas Pig, and if you've got your copy, you can flip to the back. It ends with all of these allusions are, of course, intentional. Meaning, and it was a joke in that usually you would say accidental or meaningless. And instead she said, no. Those are all deliberate plants that for my family's laughter. But the beginning of the acknowledgement page, she mentions a dear friend of hers from Porto,
Ain Keeley,
who lives somewhere in the Basque region. She's somewhere in eastern Spain.
Yes. So I think currently in Spain.
And she says there that at a sort of desperate point in her life, her friend reminded her that Christmas comes every year. And the whole Christmas thing, and we'll talk about this more, in the podcast. A key moment in Rowling's life is that she was married on Boxing Day. She was married the day after Christmas in 2001. Kind of a pivot in Rowling's life as a person is a successful marriage. She begins to have other children, but that Christmas wasn't always well. How do you take that passage? Do you think that Christmas was a great solace to her, or that she was at a bad point in Christmas and that she's going to have another chance at it? I mean, how did you take that paragraph in the acknowledgments?
I took it, and again, it needs to be an assumption, but following assiduously as I have Rowling's tweets through the years, Christmas is an important time of year for her. So I think that's true, and I think whenever Rowling is in a tough spot, I think she, sort of like conjuring a Patronus, she tries to think of the happy thoughts, and one of her happy places is Christmas, is the nativity. So I think what Aine was alluding to there was, it doesn't matter how tough it goes, every year there's going to be a Christmas.
That's great. That's great. It's resonant with the C.S. Lewis story, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the misery of Narnia under the White Queen is that it's always winter and never Christmas. All right, this is great. We had a previous show before this that we did get some feedback. It was good feedback. One of the people who wrote, who's, again, forgive me, I don't have her name right in front of me, but she said that she really enjoyed the podcast, and she hoped that we would do recordings of the longer posts because the Hogwarts Professor posts are too long. And wait, she didn't say that.
She's talking about your post, John, not mine.
Okay. And I plead guilty to that. And, I get it, because a good friend of mine likes to listen to podcasts while he walks his dogs. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to record the posts and either put them up on the podcast channel, the Rowling Studies channel, or we'll put them up as part of the Substack piece, so you can just click on that or download it. And another feedback came from our partner in crime here, Patricio Tarantino, our good buddy at the Rowling Library, which, it's not the sister site. We can't tar them with that brush, but there's a fond relationship there. And Patricio just said, John, don't make this hard for us. Get this thing on some podcast distribution platform so that we can actually download it. We don't have to sit in front of our computers or carry our phone around with us. So yeah, we're going to do that. I've already tried to get on to Spotify and what a Luddite. I really have no idea how to get on these things, but we're working on it. And so, Patricio, stay tuned. We're going to get these things on that so you don't have to listen to us that way. So that was the two big pieces of feedback. We're loving it, but you're making it hard for us, and record some more of these things. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. One of the things that nobody out there knows is that Nick Jeffrey actually predicted the existence of Christmas Pig when nobody else knew this thing existed. And it happened on the moderator channels. It happened on the email exchanges between the Fellowship of Hogwarts Professors. And Nick just flat out predicted that there was another, after the Ichabod came out, that there was another story out there, a children's story that was coming out. And I remember thinking, wow, there's predictions and then there's just madness. I mean, this was like the man that, I think it was, Uranus, the planet, that he actually looked at asteroid trajectories and found movement that predicted that there was something of a certain size that was exerting gravitational pull, and then looked for and found a planet from that kind of bizarro mathematical, that this asteroid shouldn't have shifted like that in the absence of this thing, that couldn't have happened. So there must be something there, and there was something there. I thought, wow, Nick has found a planet, a whole book that no one has talked about. Actually, let's be frank. I thought you were delusional. What is he doing here?
You weren't the only one, John.
Yeah.
Nobody was calling me Mystic Nick on the back channel.
That's right.
until that header came up of the plush pig's snout.
Wow. And we were all like, wow, he's done it. He's predicted this thing. So, I mean, this being the holiday season, somewhere between Western Christmas and Orthodox Nativity and the traditional 12 days of Christmas, we're talking about our shared favorite of Rowling's work, The Christmas Pig. I do want to get back to how you didn't mention how Ink Black Heart is a Lake favorite. But anyway, this book checks all of the Lake people's boxes. I want Nick to tell us the history of this book. This was the novel you predicted was out there, the way astronomers you used to identify unknown planets in the solar system with nothing but gravitational effect on asteroid orbits. How did you predict that the Christmas Pig was out there in the stratosphere?
So I need to go back a year before Christmas Pig was published. So this was the summer of 2020. It was a pretty horrible and frightening time for most in the Western world, we were in the middle of COVID lockdown. I think pretty much the whole Western world was in the middle of COVID lockdown. But it was a wonderful time, John. It was a wonderful time for Rowling obsessives.
There you go.
Because Rowling had broken her Twitter silence. She was out engaging with fans. She was giving us insights into her biographical history. If you cast your mind back, we saw a photograph of the flat she had in Camden, London. We saw a photograph of the tree that she came up with wand law underneath. Fabulous tweets. She had released, because she recognized that families with young children were struggling because there was no school. Many of them were living in small apartments without a garden. She released Philosopher's Stone digitally for free, so anyone could download it to read to their kids. She, along with other celebrities, were reading chapter by chapter Philosopher's Stone. So essentially there was also a free audiobook out there. And then she announced the Ichabod. So the Ichabod was the almost fabled political fairy tale that she was talking about really all the way back 2006. She hadn't finished Harry Potter yet. She was talking about, well, the next thing I'm going to publish is going to be this political fairy tale. She mentioned it in A Year in the Life, and then everything goes quiet. I think it was a CNN interview. Finally, interviewer managed to pin Rowling down on, well, what about this political fairy tale? And it turns out that a few years before, in 2015, she had used that manuscript to create a dress for one of her famous parties. And the theme of the parties was personal nightmares, and her personal nightmares was going to be the lost manuscript. And she turned this manuscript into a dress. We have a photograph. Actually, now we have 2 photographs of it. It really is a stunning creation. But she wasn't going to publish it. She decided she was not going to publish the Ichabod. It gets packed away into her attic, and it sort of becomes the Rowling family story. So she read it to her kids. It's part of their shared experience, but it's a private family story. She's going to dust it off, took it down from the attic, worked with her publishers to get it into a publishable condition, and then she released it as a serial. So the whole world got to enjoy this book at the same time, chapter by chapter, and we discussed it as each section came out. It was an absolute joy. Kids around the world were creating artwork for a competition, so everyone had the opportunity to see their own painting appear in the published work. A magical time. And then our own little Socratic gadfly within Hogwarts professor said, wait a minute.
Hogwash!
Wait a minute. This is hogwash. This is PR washing. This is Rowling regenerating her appearance by coming up with this story. She was always going to publish the Ichabod. And to be fair, John had found convincing evidence to that. So on her website, this was the 2018 Q&A. On her own website, it says, I've just finished the 4th Galbraith novel, Lethal White, and I'm now writing the screenplay for Fantastic Beasts 3. After that, I'll be writing another book for children. I've been playing with the non-Harry Potter Wizarding World story for about 6 years, so it's about time I get it down on paper. Oh.
It's a lie.
Well, there we are.
It's a lie.
Well, there we are. There we are. Far from being hidden away in her attic, from 2018, she's been working on this kid's story, and now she's used COVID as an excuse to boast her own philanthropic image, and we've been hoodwinked by this major celebrity.
What a cynic.
But,
what a cynic this guy was.
Well, we all know J.K. Rowling cannot be entirely trusted when it comes to dates and sequences of events. This is not a strong suit within Rowling's armory. We know numbers. She can have trouble with numbers. For me, the dates just did not add up. In an interview, I can understand maybe things get mixed up. But for this story, she's talking about playing with it since 2012. Well, this was exactly the point in time that Rowling had pretty much abandoned the Ichabod.
That's right.
So this story that she's been working with between 2012 and 2018 could not have been the Ichabod. And that means if it's not the Ichabod, there is this other children's story out there. And that's what turned out to be, to my everlasting relief, turned out to be the Christmas Pig.
Well,
and when it arrived, wow. So I don't think there has ever been another book where the newspaper reviewers have picked up on some of the shed work. So the newspaper reviewers picked up on Divine Comedy, they picked up on Pilgrim's Progress. Is that unique, John? I can't think of another Rowling book that the newspaper reviewers have got anything other than just entirely surface reading.
Well, Deathly Hallows, you saw some of that, but that was because there had been so much work done already. There was final acknowledgement that there was a lot of Christian content in the Harry Potter series with Deathly Hallows where it became really unavoidable. I mean, there was so much resurrection, material inside the story that they got it. But it would be as if when Philosopher's Stone came out, people started talking about the alchemical content inside the book. That didn't happen, Nick. I've got the scars to show you that didn't happen. This whole story is. I'm sorry. Maybe this is just throat clearing to our audience. They're just like, get to the interpretation of the book, will you? Yeah. But I want to just for a second here on your dates. First of all, congratulations. No one's ever done that. Maybe no one will ever do that again. Predict a Rowling book out of the sky and it appears in the heavens. That was a real achievement. And obviously, I get to be the idiot here on the ground saying, and I'll take that role. But this book is important to serious strikers. She says that she really started working on it in 2012. And 2012 is when everything really happens. It's the publication time for Casual Vacancy, and it's really she's at the heart of her time of planning the strike books, which begin to appear in the next couple of years. That 2012 nexus, I think, is and we'll have to have Evan on Rowling Studies to talk about this. He has a theory that the strike books are in parallel with Harry Potter, not only through the first 7 books, but they'll be in parallel with Rowling's works in the last 3 books as well, that we're going to see Strike 8 is Casual Vacancy, Strike 9, the Ichabod, and Strike 10 will be the Christmas Pig. So that if you're a serious striker, not so much a Potter pundit, and you're thinking, why am I listening to a podcast on Christmas Pig, is that this book is, because it was really conceived in 2012, was conceived when Rowling was working so hard at the entire arch of the story for Cormoran Strike. That the Christmas Pig is the parallel point for the end of the Cormoran Strike series. That may be a real stretch for you. I don't know if you know about anything about Tetractys theory and such, but it's brilliant, and we really do need to have Evan Willis on to talk about his geometric understanding of the Strike series and Rowling's works. But yeah,
I think that would be great, John. I think, and if there are listeners that haven't read Evan's Tetractys posts, do it now, because it really is exciting. It is a little bit far out there, maybe. It's a stretch, but it's a theory, and it's a theory that importantly makes the 7-book series and the 10-book series fit.
That's right. It's that little bit out there thing, I mean, that's kind of the every time that I've had a hit with ideas about Rowling things, the initial response to every one of those ideas, be it literary alchemy, be it the Christian content, the Christian symbolism, be it the parallel series idea, the first response of readers is always, no way, John. There's no way she's writing Shakespearean, alchemical work. It's just not happening. And then the evidence builds up and you're there. That's kind of the thing. When I first saw that pyramid, that tetractys pyramid, I was like, really? But then Running Grave came out, and I think you really do see that 5 and 6 is probably the center of this 10-book series. It's very exciting stuff. I want to go back a little bit to the acknowledgments page. I think it's on the acknowledgments page. He talks about how the book began, the 5 Murrays at the beach.
That in itself is quite exciting. So Rowling has been extremely successful in shielding her family from the public. We know, although I wouldn't term it a blended family, we do know that of course Rowling was a single parent. So it was a 2-person unit of herself and her daughter Jessica. Rowling then remarries Dr. Neil Murray, and they have 2 further children. And this is the first time that I think the whole family has been described as the Murrays. Certainly I had to work at that a little bit as well. So the 5 Murrays, could I place Jessica within those 5 Murrays? We know that Neil has a wider family, some of which have the surname Murray, so it could have been the 4 Murrays and an in-law. But she gives a special thanks to the logic-based questioning of DEC. DEC is an abbreviation of Decker. Decker is the nickname for Jessica Mitford originally, but now also Rowling uses it of her daughter Jessica. So in terms of how Rowling sees her family, they are the 5 Murrays.
It's hard to overstate how important that is. If you're a serious striker, you may have noticed that sibling issues predominate in the strike books. And now we've got 7 known crises in Rowling's life. 6 are public record, have been the subject of her own comment, reader discussion. The one that has not been part of the public record, but which is evident in the Strike series, and especially in The Christmas Pig, is what you've been talking about here, Nick, her second marriage and her subsequent blended family. Rowling, again, much to her credit, ferociously private and protective of her Murray identity and the family. So little is known about her husband, their 2 children, how they all get along, and how Jessica Orontes, Decca, the daughter of Rowling's first marriage, who was separated as a child by court decree from any contact with her biological father, fits into the Murray clan. As we mentioned, the Rowling Murray wedding was celebrated the day after Western Nativity 20 years ago, plus. So there's an obvious link, beyond Rowling's confession of the same in the book's acknowledgments and interviews, between that holiday marriage, her blended family, and this Christmas story, and all the sibling tensions inside that. I think that Rowling was celebrating by 2012 that there were 5 Murrays.
Yeah.
But that she was also acknowledging that crises, okay, that the union, the Murray union, as we're seeing it reflected in the Strike novels, Christmas Pig, really has not been a Disney movie without significant struggle or conflict. The Strike novels are largely about male and female roles in light of vocation and the difficulty of a woman taking what has been traditionally a man's role as her vocation while remaining fully feminine. It's no great leap to speculate that the Rowling Murray marriage has had to contend from its start with the elephant in the room of the global celebrity billionaire wife being the primary provider and the public face of the family rather than the husband. Rowling's heroic and sacrificial stand against this mad overreach of transgender activists and their supporters has largely been, I think, the fruit of her study and reflection in light of that struggle on the roles and identities of men and women as such. Respecting biological reality and the boundaries while acknowledging, respecting, and nourishing the masculine and feminine aspects in each person. The Christmas Pig differs from the Strike series in that it reflects another Murray family issue. Christmas Pig has as its foundation story the agony of a young child in a blended family whose biological father is absent physically and emotionally, and whose older stepsister is a bully consequent to her own issues about daddy. The serious reader of Rowling, and one even superficially familiar with her life, does not strain his or her eyes to see David and Mackenzie Murray and Jessica Orantes here as the story models for Jack and Holly. The ages don't quite match up. I think I've made mistakes about this, but it's doggone close.
Yeah, and I think that Holly, as depicted in the book, seems older than her 11 years. She appears to be the archetypal stroppy teenager rather than a precocious 11-year-old. So I think you could be forgiven for thinking there may be some biographical allusion in that. I'll pick you up as well. You mentioned Jessica Orantes. Now, this is a common error among my fellow Rowling obsessives and tabloid journalists. So there is a young lady, Jessica Orantes, of about the right age. This young lady is a bikini model, and she has taken credit for congratulations to Rowling for her daughter getting engaged, and congratulations to Rowling for her daughter on the birth of her first grandchild. This Jessica Orantes is no relation of J.K. Rowling, or in fact her ex-husband. Lovely young lady as she is, this is an entirely erroneous connection.
We don't even know, though. We don't know if what Decca goes by in public. We don't know if she's Jessica Orantes, Rowling, Murray. We don't. Do we know her legal name?
No, we don't. We don't know that. We know of only one photograph, and this was before she was a teenager, that is in the public domain of Jessica Rowling, and that's pretty much all we know. We can infer, Five Murray's comment that she goes by something Murray. She could use Jessica. She could use Decca. She may have a professional name that she goes by, but we know so very little about her.
I don't know what the name Decca actually refers to. I mean, I've got the Jessica Mitford biography on my wall here, which says the title is Decca, but it is funny that the Strike book is a 10-book series, and Dec is clearly a Greek reference to 10. Maybe this is really about this family agony. I'm gonna go deeper into this, though. Rowling dedicates the book to David, her son, and she's explained in interviews that the story toys, the cuddly pig favorites replacement, they reflect two such cuddly pigs that her son adored. Jack Jones, however, is a name front and back that is a form of the name John. Okay, that's Jack and Jones both come from John, and he is this Jack Jones in the story is Joanne Rowling more than David Murray. Her name also derived from Ioannes, the Greek word for John. And Rowling has given her daughter Mackenzie the middle name Jean, the more obvious feminine form of John. I mean, to put all my allegorical and sublime symbols and cards right on the table at the start, what Jack has lost in the story is his father. What Holly fears losing to her stepbrother is her father. The pig is the exteriorized heart or love he has as token, or what Rowling has called the transitional object of maternal unconditional love. And the story of the loser is the sublimated agony of separation from dad, experienced as a child hero must in the world of things and language. Okay, the Christmas Pig, in addition to this psychological allegory or dream journey, is an anagogical tale of seeking communion with the Father in heaven through the light in one's heart. This Johannine theology of logos love that permeates Rowling's work. I mean, that's a big thing here. But I think it's undeniable. We're going to talk about this. It's going to be a large part of this conversation. But the big thing here is from the lake that I'm getting is that Rowling has embedded in her stories as their common conflict, kind of the golden thread that goes through all of her work. And that's what we're about here, right? This is the 2054 perspective. Is that golden thread is the tension between Peter and James and John, between the exoteric and the esoteric, between the law and love. Okay? And there's also in Christmas Pig, we get her Dante-esque self-understanding as a writer, what we also see in Harry Potter. And we see the means and ends of her story as, and this is a tough one. Hold on, folks. As extra liturgical sacred art. Okay, and that's the best way to understand her work. This includes not especially opaque references to that kind of artistry in all of her stories, and Christmas Pig especially. Again, I'm jumping into your lake question here to talk about shed elements, but there's a blend here. I mean, you can't get Peter and John without getting the whole Peter-John Rowling aspect of her life. The death of her mother. She's named both for her father, Peter John, with the Joannes, and also for Anne because it's Joanne, like Diane. There's this blending here between masculine and feminine. Everything is in this book, and yet it comes out of Rowling self-understanding. Wow. I'm jumping the gun here, I know, but I just love this this part of the story.
I think it's the format of the book that allows her the freedom to be that open about it. So this is a fantasy, it is an allegory.
There you go.
Completely open to allow that, completely free rein to draw on her life allusions, her literary allusions, and all of the structural work that you talk about. She isn't constrained by there having to be a procedural formulaic as per Strike. She isn't constrained by the fact it needs to be a series, as in Harry Potter. She can be as open as she wants to. She has the freedom in this format to do it, and I'd like to see more of it.
Well, that leads to the whole Dante element, right? I confess, I read Christmas Pig straight through, and I got a few hints about the Divine Comedy element, the three cities and stuff. And I'm into Dante. I was the guy who broke the code in Harry Potter about Snape as Dante and his death scene being taken straight from the end of the Purgatory. I mean, I'm into it. But what you're talking about, you can't read Dante today without notes about, basically, 13th century Florence and Dante's life story, because there are so many life elements inside the Divine Comedy. Right? I mean, this is really his personal agony going through it. He's meeting people from his own life experience inside, the Inferno and Purgatorio and such. And that's really, I think, how you have to read Rowling's thing. But Evan Willis blows this open. I mean, Evan Willis, really, I think it was the week after Christmas Pig was published in October. All the stuff that I wrote about Christmas Pig was this time 2 years ago. I had a couple of months to really dig into the structure of the story, lay out its ring, do all that work with the symbolism. I was really in the throes of my PhD at that point. I totally rewrote my PhD in light of Christmas Pig and Troubled Blood. You described it earlier as a great time for those who were Rowling obsessives. Well, it wasn't if you were writing a PhD, because she was giving you way too much information and new material. But Evan Willis, I'm just going to read really what he wrote about Dante's Divine Comedy, which is, in addition to all the biographical detail, all the lake material, if you the lake of fire you get in the Inferno from Dante's own life, is the shed artistry. That, Beatrice Groves, the queen of literary illusion in Rowling's work, talks a lot about the Velveteen Rabbit and such. But I think she went there not only because she wanted to talk about stuffed toys, but because Evan Willis had already done the Divine Comedy. She'd taken the big prize off the table in terms of literary illusion. And I'm just gonna read. I don't know if there's 9-10 points here of correspondence, but again, this is all Evan Willis. He writes, the Christmas Pig is structured to a surprising degree of detail after Dante's Divine Comedy. At point 1, after the loss of a beloved, Beatrice or Der Pig, Jack Dante enters the land of perdition sometime around Christmas Easter, where he is accompanied and guided by Christmas Pig Virgil through the various domains of the land of perdition, described in contrast to the land of the living. After a few not-so-bad upper sections, they arrive at the city of Dis, or Disposable, which has a foreboding entry message. And I want to note that entry message, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. In Dante's, hell or Dis, is the pointer to how the function of hope much later in the story, right? That we're going to start with Dis and we're going to end up with hope. Anyway, continuing back to Evan. Continuing through this land, Christmas Pig Virgil is far harsher to its inhabitants than Jack Dante is. You remember Christmas Pig basically beating up Lunchy, in Dis. That's very Virgil-esque, kicking the heads of people in the Inferno. Anyway, the ruler of the land of perdition is the loser, Satan, who eats some of the inhabitants. Having gone through the worst of it, the run-in with Satan loser in the depths of hell, or in this Christmas Pig, the waste of the unlamented, they eventually make it out to an upper land surrounded by water, which is purgatory or the city of the mist. It's a region filled with the sound of carol or hymn singing. Ascending from the city, Jack Dante ascends to the borders of the Isle of the Beloved, or heaven, where Jack Dante finally sees Der Pig or Beatrice, only to realize somewhat belatedly that Christmas Pig Virgil is no longer with him. Whoops, we lost our guide. Led to move beyond Der Pig or Beatrice to a greater love than retaining him or her would have meant, Jack Dante is guided further on by St. Nicholas, Santa Claus in the story, or St. Bernard in Dante, into a mystery of love represented by a vortex of circular motion and white light. Throughout this journey, Jack Dante has talked along the way with numerous inhabitants who give him knowledge of the land of the living. Jack Dante would not have had otherwise. And this further explains the division of the book into 9 sections. And Evan basically said, I'm going to let John do that. God bless him. But again, lake and shed time here. You can't read Dante without all of the lake material. And as you've demonstrated, really, Nick, you can't read Christmas Pig or Rowling in general without understanding her life story. And in 2054, Rowling scholars are going to be talking about all we've learned about Rowling's life. Here we're because Rowling has been so good, we don't even know her first daughter's legal name. She's been real good about shielding her family. We don't know that much, but we know logical things. Obviously there were sibling issues, or you wouldn't get this book. Anyway. Evan's laying out the Dantean structure, which is the alchemical structure, made it very easy for the shed readers to get enthusiastic about Pig. But this is a favorite of lake readers too, right? It's not casual vacancy, but you've said it's top 3 for her, right? That this is autobiographical writing.
It is, and as I've mentioned, it's the most self-avowed autobiographical writing. So just briefly, for me, the big 3 are casual vacancy, which is the Rowling's life story from birth up to 2007. So many facets of her life, particularly growing up in the small village of Tutshill, close to Chepstow. Then there's the Ink Black Heart. And the Ink Black Heart is a bang up-to-date experience of Rowling with the fandom post-2007 to date. And I think that's undisputed. So people who have read the chat logs, who've studied some of the personalities within the fandom, all of this is drawn upon her life experiences, drawn upon real life. But for this book, the very founding principle of this little pig stuffed toy, we've known about it for years. So never mind Mystic Nick discovering this in 2020. We had a photograph of this toy pig on her original Harry Potter website way back in 2004, certainly no later than 2006. There was a little beanie pig on the desktop. This was DP. This was David's infant toy there. She's mentioned it on Twitter, so she is very close friends with a lady, Jenny Colgan, who writes romantic literature and recently has brought out a series of children's books about a puffin. Her child had a toy puffin that was lost at an airport. She tweeted out an appeal, "Can somebody please reunite my child with her puffin?" And Rowling responded, "We've got one of those. We've got an irreplaceable, dirty, smelly toy. We've got one of those, but ours is a pig." So we know about this pig. This pig has happened. She's alluded to it in the Fantastic Beast series of films. So if you remember, the speakeasy in New York in that first film was the blind pig.
Right. So so almost certainly her pig was called BP, right? Because tell about the surgery, the blind pig.
Yeah. So this toy, this pig, was so loved, as children tend to love their toys. It was falling to pieces. The eyes used to have plastic eyes. The eyes had come out, so the pig was essentially blind. Now, Rowling's sister, Di, is a qualified nurse, and I'd like to think that she was involved in the rehabilitation of BP, of the blind pig, because there is a photograph that she showed of BP in bed with bandages round his head, little chart at the bottom, and this also was in the Christmas Pig, if you recall, that surgery was performed on DP to regain his sight. This happened to David's BP. I mean, how much more autobiographical can you get? So David's adventures with BP, continually losing him. We know that she started plotting the story in a family holiday on the beach. Now, does anyone want to put any money on whether David was burying BP at some point on that beach?
Absolutely.
I think it's inevitable. So we know that the premise and the replacement toy was from her family life. We know because of that wonderful acknowledgements section. All that remains to say that any resemblance between the things, capitalized things, in these pages and the things our family may have lost or found is, of course, entirely intentional. That means everything. The inhaler in the lunchbox, all the bad habits. We are invited to try and place that within Rowling's family's experience. These are personal things for her and her family.
Have you got at hand? There's two things she talked about in interviews, specifically, to really encourage you to go there in terms of speculation. One of them was the earrings, and the other one was that this is not just David's toy. This is her toy, right?
Yeah. So she was asked. She was asked during the Scholastic series of interviews that they're available on the Rowling Library YouTube channel. I recommend you go and have a look at them.
Yeah.
It's one of the better interviews with Rowling and young children. And Rowling and young children is always a joy. But she talked about her equivalent of Der Pig, and it's a large blue-eyed pink and white teddy bear, which was bought for me by my grandparents. I ended up calling him Henry after one of the trains on Thomas the Tank Engine, and it's still with her. So that is her personal childhood toy. There's another toy.
Yeah, this is the one
Yeah,
I was like, what? I didn't know about the teddy bear. It's the turtle.
Yeah,
right?
so that's the teddy bear from her grandparents. But there was also a toy that she received as a slightly older child from her mother. Mother's love, and this is a key point in all of Rowling's works. So, and this was in the New York Times article that came out shortly before Christmas 2021. I own a cuddly tortoise sewn by my mother, which she gave me when I was 7. It has a floral shell, a red underbelly, and black felt eyes. Even though I'm notoriously prone to losing things, I've managed to keep hold of that tortoise through sundry house moves and even changes of country. So we know this went to Portugal and back with her. My mother died over 30 years ago, so I've now lived more of my life without her than with her. I find more comfort in that tortoise than I do in photographs of her, which are now so faded and dated and emphasize how long she's been gone. What consoles me is the permanence of the object she made, its unchanging nature, its stolid, three-dimensional reality. I'd give up many of my own possessions to keep that tortoise, the few exceptions being things that have their own elusive power. What joy that she uses that phrase, yeah. elusive power, like my wedding ring. You talk about, or Rowling rather talks about the alivening of things. That is, that when inanimate objects, through your or another's love, gives power to that thing. That's what she's talking about. So when she wants to feel a communion with her mother, there is the tortoise. Not in photographs, but in that physical three-dimensional object. And then she brings up her wedding ring. So that would be her communion to her husband and to her family.
That toy that she has is clear, and her reflection on it. She's clearly thought a lot about toys and this thing. And again, you've got much greater command of the interview stuff than I do. She talked about this transitional object, and this was the engine of a lot of Evan Willis's insights, is that he had been studying toys as transitional objects. But Rowling says it's also got a magic quality. I mean, do you have that at hand, what that interview was?
So I think that's talking of the transitional object, another one from the Times interview shortly before, or not so much Times interview, I think it was a Times article that she published. It's on the Rowling Library website in the list of Rowling's works, and she talked about these objects being transitional between the direct content of a mother, of a parental figure, and then the transference of that comfort, of that love, onto another object, so that when the mother or the parental figure wasn't directly close to that child, the child gained comfort from this. And again, that's talking about almost embodying a mother's love within the inanimate.
That Rowling's principal artistry on the allegorical and anagogical levels is exteriorization. Be it the Mirror of Erised, be it the Bogart, whatever. I mean, that you're going to take the inside and make it outside. And then, just like a story, you're going to then interiorize it again after you. It's cognitive behavior therapy. You bring your beliefs out, you look at them, and you choose the ones that work. You re-interiorize them, or you choose better ones, and you throw away the ones that aren't working for you. I mean, this is what Rowling's saving psychological experience. But she talks about that transitional object language in psychology, and she says it's a little too clinical for her. That she thinks there's a bit of magic in this exteriorization inside the story. And that's because of the importance of mother's love inside her story, that really a mother's love is the way she talks about unconditional, selfless, sacrificial love, which is the love of Christ. When she wants to put that inside her stories, it's a mother's love. And that's what Der Pig certainly is. I mean, Rowling is explicit on that. On page 1 of the book, she has Jack Jones sucking on the pig's ear. It's a nipple displacement, right? I mean, it's the source of comfort. I mean, every child, as the mother and child are really symbiotic, not only in gestation, in the womb, but postpartum as well. For a significant period, the child really doesn't understand that it's separate from its mother. And then when it does have something, that's a trauma. Hence the transitional object of a toy. But Rowling is basically saying that, this child in this story, we're seeing a child whose family has a breakdown. There's something wrong inside the family, and so this child is especially attached to this pig. There's some weakness inside this family. Because Jack's connection to his pig is not every child's attachment to their toy. I suspect that Rowling, because of her relationship with Peter Rowling, and I'm going to go out on the speculative highway here, but seriously, we know that Rowling has a bad relationship with her father, or at least not a positive relationship with her father. She's given this tortoise at age 7, and that, this in a way that's pretty old for a plush toy. And yet Rowling is, as she says, miraculously has held on to this thing. This is not a woman that really has her the physical objects in her life in order. She lost a pair of diamond earrings too, right? I mean, this is not a lady who really finds great attachment to things.
But she never liked the earrings, John. I think that was the key.
That's true. But again, that tortoise, which was not, apparently she describes it, it's not, it was a homemade toy. It's your coat of many colors here from Dolly Parton. This is not something that anybody else is going to appreciate, but to her, it's the love of her mother. And by God, everything else can go. We're not losing this tortoise. I'm gonna go back to, because we're talking about Peter Rowling here already. We know that Jack Jones and the Christmas Pig are the Johns of the story. Basically the mother's love piece. Beside the unnamed negligent dad, we don't know who the Peters are, right? I mean, unlike Jack, whose name is the marker and giveaway of his Joannian role and function, we're not given a Peter or Simon name as a direct pointer in Christmas Pig's Land of the Living or Land of the Lost as to who she's talking about. But I think the opposition between those whose touchstone is maternal or unconditional love, Team Jack, and the people and things whose life orientation is fear of and conformity with the law, I'm going to call them Team Loser. We've got as clear signals of Rowling's Peter and John defining psychological polarity inside Christmas Pig. Team Loser, as with that monster's wounded desire to understand, consume, and acquire the enlivened bit of things, really their soul, and of Jack, to gain the capacity to love things as much as people do, as the loser says at the end. Team Loser, they don't live in the light of love, that logos enlivening bit within them, but in fear or its complement as agents of violence. Okay? The father figure internalized here is the law, which to a child and the things come alive in the land of the lost is the guiding fear of arbitrary violence of the dad power that enforces the rules. Okay? I mean, to see that, if that sounds like, a huge leap to you, read the dialogue of the lost adjusters in Mislaid who manhandle Blue Bunny to the chute onto the waist of the unlamented. Nobody wants you. Nobody cares you're lost. You're surplus. I mean, that's rough. And then there's the soliloquy of Scissors, who I love as a character, indisposable. It's the truth. Things need to know their place. That's how we all stay out of trouble, you know. And then we have the speech of Mayor Greater and Bother It's Gone, the raving of King Power in the City of the Mist, and the common response of things to these rants, namely conformity to the law in fear rather than resistance in union with love and justice. That vote in the palace of the City of the Mist about Jack and Christmas Pig's fate, I'm going to talk about that more later on, is the conflict of every soul about whether to side with our internalized maternal unconditional love, the logos fabric of reality, our heart, or with the fear of paternal violence that will destroy our ego existence. Memory, happiness, hope, optimism, and only half of our principles that are 7 votes for John, vain beauty, ambition, power, and the principles that value order before truth, the law before justice, they vote against Jack and the Pig. Power, King Power, overrules the majority vote, but hope, really, and faith saves Jack and Pig both in the palace and in the loser's lair. Okay, so and if you don't see John and Peter in that, I think you're really missing, the conflict inside the story, which is always in Rowling. I think it's always going to be between John and Peter, between Anne and her father. The most again, if you doubt this, look at the objects that are chosen to be loss adjusters, right? And I confess, I think every Halloween for the rest of my life, I'm going to want to get one of those hats with a giant L on it. I mean, that's all right. Anyway, in the palace, those things that Power uses to capture the boy and his pig are razors, scissors, pincers, and knives, wire clippers, chisels, and the huge mallet. Okay? These are typical. The agents of the law are things that cut, scissors, penknife, tin opener, things that smash, masher the hammer, crusher the boot, the mallet, things that poke or pierce, fork and pin. All of these things are threats or weapons that make us fear for our physical safety and integrity. They break up our union with what is good and true, with the possibility of our unity as things made up of stuff and soul being shattered. And frankly, that's Dad, right? That's Dad spanking you. I mean, he's going to break you down, right? They are the agents of the loser who literally sucks out the enlivened bit of things and leaves them as something spiritually dead. The husks of a person that is attached with the Dementor's kiss. Rowling's Peter-John dichotomy does not have a Peter in Christmas Pig, but is the loveless and violent aspect of the loser's world and his agents and their generation of fear with the threat of violence that are its evidence representatives. I mean, Rowling is, as you said, she's basically said, read this story in terms of my life. And there's all these correspondences, right? I mean, you've laid them out. I mean, like, we've never had someone testify that much about it. And you haven't talked yet. I really want to hear. Yeah, we're going to get to that Blue Bunny scene where Rowling actually makes a cameo, right? That's just a huge thing. But I really think if you're going to talk about the lake aspects to this book, you have to take the next step and say, yep, not only is, we're going to talk about the sibling thing too, but it's clearly still that core. When you talk about the 7 crises of Rowling's life, the first 2 are, death of Anne Rowling, Anne Volant Rowling, and her broken relationship with her father. That they're just everywhere in what she's right, and boy, they make up the whole conflict inside this book.
They do. I mean, is there amongst all of that? We talked about the turtle as the object of her love for her mother and her mother's love for her, the turtle. Are there any turtlebacks? Is there room in this for a ring structure?
Boy, that was a segue. Well, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, seriously, there's a turtleback, okay, as well as a turtle plush toy. Evan Willis, again, how much of this is Evan Willis? Evan Willis got there first. I mean, there's a military axiom. You want to get there first with the most, and Evan got there first with both the Dante imagery and the 9 parts aspects of this book. And the 9 parts, to get the 9 parts, you have to see them as being at equal length, but they're not. The first part, you have to get the whole backstory of Jack, and that's a quarter of the book. You're a quarter. You're into the book. You have a quarter of the pages and the chapters of the book in part 1. And that's an astonishing thing, really, right? And the latch is only 1 chapter, but it works. If you lay this out as a 9-part ring, it all works. And just real quick, I'm not gonna. I wrote up a very long post that that I'll have to read out loud for people to if I don't read it. But the clasp of the story, and again, let's do how a ring works. You draw a circle on a page with the beginning and the end at the bottom. Where the beginning and the end meet up, there you call that the clasp of the ring. That's the beginning and end parts. And they have to hook up so that it's almost like a question and an answer. It has to be, you have conflict and then you have resolution at the finish. And at the center of the story, say the top of that circle that you've drawn, that's going to be the center. And the meaning is going to be in the middle, right? And that middle point is going to reflect the beginning, and it's going to point to the finish. And here's the turtleback part of this thing is the chapters going out to that center on that, as you've drawn that circle, they're going to be reflected in reverse order coming back. So that you're going to get, if you draw that circle out and you draw a line connecting the center with the bottom, you bisect that circle, and then you draw the lines across between those parallel chapter echoes. There's that turtleback picture. There's Rowling's tortoise in the story form. Now, in Christmas Pig, the clasp, the story's beginning and end parts, 1 and 9 respectively, take place up there in the land of the living. Jack's home, as part 9 is titled. The last part, the only one in part 9, is the last chapter, the only one in part 9 is found, which is an obvious complement and completion to the lost chapter in part 1, in which Jack reacts to DP's defenestration. Holly's throwing him out a window of a moving car. What a mean woman. Anyway, the center of the story is the nadir, negretto of part 5, the wastes of the unlamented, which points to beginning and end while marking the beginning of the end, the story's second half. It reveals the solution to the mystery of Holly's bizarro behavior in part 1. She was so nice at the beginning of part 1, and then all of a sudden she's killing Jack's connection with his mom. But in part 5, right at the center, Jack meets Bully Boss in the Bad Habit Gang. All right, and that it's the solution to that mystery, and it points to the story ending in parts 8 and 9 with the appearance of the loser. Right there, that the waste of the unlamented. We see the loser. Jack makes his failed attempt to save Broken Angel. His first attempt to save Broken Angel. He bonds with CP in a hug, and the sacrificial love and the finding of Blue Bunny. Blue Bunny being this clear Easter reference inside this book. Okay, so the center is loaded in Christmas Pig. It's just loaded. It gives you the beginning, gives you the end. It ties everything together. The meaning is definitely in the middle of Christmas Pig. The chiastic structure, the parallels are turtleback lines crossing the story axis, bisecting the ring top to bottom, connect Jack and CP's adventures in the 6 identical places in the land of the lost. The waste of the barren era in which the wastes of the unlamented are that barren area in which all the other places in the land of the lost are placed, with the crater holding the loser's lair acting as its center. Everything in the land of the lost pivots around the loser's lair or death. And there's a message there too, which we'll talk about in a minute. Again, parts 2 and 8 are called Mislaid and the Loser's Lair. They're the periphery and the origin of the land of the lost story circle, in which Jack spends the briefest times, and from which his only aim in Mislaid and the Loser's Lair is to escape. right? I mean, in the one, he's going out into the land of the loser, but he's trying to find Der Pig, and the loser's lair. He's trying to escape because he's found Christmas Pig. He needs to get out of there because he's saved everybody else. It looks like he's sacrificed himself. He's going to die. The loser's going to get him. Indisposable and the Island of the Beloved, they're the least and the most desirable places, respectively, for lost things to be allocated. And I mean, Island of the Beloved, you don't get there from Mislaid. You got to come there direct, right? Jack's exit from the first and entry to the last are in vehicles into which Jack and CP are squeezed or wrapped up tight together. He gets out of Disposable inside Lunchy, and he gets to the Island of the Beloved inside the carpet wrapping that Hope flies him to the Island of the Beloved. Bother It's Gone and the City of the Mist, they're both cities for privileged things that are ruled by pathological seekers of political and personal advantage. Addie the Address Book and Mayor Greater are in parallel with Ambition and King Power. I mean, it's a solid ring. Everything Rowling writes, from longer Twitter threads to individual stories to her, the parts of her novels, the series of novels. Her name, I've been talking about, Joanne here as John, but really a large part of her name is Rowling. It's motion in a circle. She writes in rings. And Christmas Pig.
I'm convinced her shopping list begin with milk, eggs, and end with eggs, milk.
I love it. And I hope that someday someone will dive into her bins and find that list just to see if this is true. No, I can see Rowling now shred all shopping lists. Do not allow Nick Jeffrey to find a shopping list. Anyway, Christmas Pig. It's one of Rowling's tightest. I've said that it's the single book that I recommend to people. If they only have one thing they're going to read by Rowling, I say Christmas Pig. And one of the reasons for that is that it's Rowling's tightest and most effective chiastic structure. It's a real delight for people consumed by, shed artistry. But the Blue Bunny, okay, is perhaps the pig character with the most profound and telling story arc. What is Rowling's life? Back into the lake here. What does Rowling's life tell us about the Blue Bunny?
Well, the Blue Bunny, of course, is real. So it is a real object in the Murray family history. And she's talked about this in interview. So I quote her here. My youngest daughter, she found a muddy little blue bunny in the flower bed that had obviously been there for years. And just like the mother in the story, I said it will break the washing machine if we put that bunny in the washing. She really begged me to keep it, and she still has that blue bunny, which must have been dropped by a child in the garden a long time ago. But we managed to clean Blue Bunny up pretty well. So that was also inspired by something that happened in my family. I think the also is redundant. I think you cannot move for real life allusions to the Murray family in this book. But for me, it's particularly moving on a number of different levels. So this was found by Mackenzie Jean Murray, almost certainly in the Victorian Edinburgh house that the Murray family now lives in. Mackenzie Jean Murray could have anything she wanted. Her mother is a billionaire. She wanted this muddy, mouldy, it's been outside in all weathers, in Scottish weather, artificial rabbit is what she wanted. She didn't want a blue bunny, she wanted that blue bunny. And I think that shows some level of compassion, in that the reason that she wanted it was because it was unloved. It was a blank canvas that she could put her love onto this unloved object. So Blue Bunny in the story is a hopeless object. He has been cast out. He has been told he's not wanted. He is worthless. And then, probably the most profound self-insert that Rowling has ever done, she puts herself and she puts her daughter into the story to reach down and rescue this character, to rescue Blue Bunny. Now, I love it when you can hear the Rowling authorial voice. It's very clear in the Ichabod. In the Strike series, you really have to listen for it, because very often, of course, it's the characters talking, it's not the author. It's still there, but you need to look for it. In this is the Mary Sue. So Rowling is there, okay? She's called her daughter Jeannie rather than Mackenzie Jane, but that is the voice of her, and that is the voice of her daughter. She has broken through into the story.
And how does she break through in the stories? You put your finger on it, in that it's a rescue, and that Rowling honors this maternal love in her daughter. Clearly nonplussed that her daughter wants to bring a piece of trash into her house, but she's going to honor this rescue motive, which is very much like remorse that motivates Holly inside the book, in that it's selfless. There's simply no gain. There's no advantage in picking up a dirty blue bunny inside the thing.
But there's no obvious, there's no visible advantage to it. I mean, I think the point is that the advantage is there, but it is within oneself.
That's
it
right.
It is spiritual.
That's right.
That is the advantage.
That's right. There's no exteriorized advantage to being seen with a dirty blue toy, but interior wise, you feel this communion with what's most real inside of you, and that's the real here is where we're going, right? I mean, because that's Rowling reflects on this blue bunny, and she thinks about it, and she injects it inside this story. Now, the temptation here to whoever's writing the annotated Christmas Pig in the future is going to be to say, just connect the dots. Rowling told us this story, and so she picks up this life event and throws it in her thing. Well, Rowling has a lot of life events. Why did she choose to put in this very allegorical story? Why does she choose to put a blue bunny in there? All right, I'll unpack that in a while, but that's not an accident. The color blue and the bunny both. Obviously, at one point, Rowling had an aha moment. Oh, the blue bunny! What is that about? And what kind of story can that be used in? And that's really genius to see life art correspondence. And it's a way it's a magnificent cipher for the whole Lake Shed experience, where Rowling is confronted with this blue bunny in her life, and she picks up this bunny, throws it in the washing machine, and takes it into her shed, and transforms this blue bunny into a figure that is going to be like the specters in Christmas Carol, I believe, in the future. That I'm really surprised that we don't have blue bunny toys being sold right now for Christmas time. I definitely want my grandchildren to have blue bunnies. I mean, really, can't you do that?
I think one of the things that truly surprised me was the choice of artwork for this book. And I'm not saying that the artwork isn't good. It's great artwork. Rowling, clearly in her interviews,
she raves on it. She raves on it.
Thinks it's wonderful. But for me, it is very animated film.
That's right.
Style.
That's right. Anime almost.
Yeah. If you think of Monsters Inc., that kind of animated
Pixar.
Christmas film.
That's right.
Pixar. I'm surprised, honestly, nobody has picked it up to make that animated film. And I think from that we will get all the plush toys you could ever want.
Okay.
Christmas pigs and blue bunnies and
I mean, this is off topic, but but this is the way our conversations go, Nick. Clearly Rowling has been offered millions tens of millions of dollars for the rights to this story. I can't believe that Pixar isn't in negotiation with Warner Brothers Discovery. Hasn't called, her horrific
Neil Blair,
the
Rottweiler.
Neil Blair. You know that Neil Blair has gotten offers on this. This is
Really?
Absolutely. There's simply no way that he has, and that I'm so confident of that. To me, my question isn't, when will we see this? It's why hasn't Rowling already picked up that money? And I think it's because this story, in a way, is so personal and so important to her, and it's so much about imagination. This is so much about that Jack in the Box scene. First, there's Jack in the Box, and then there's Jack in the lunchbox, and then there's Jack on the run after the loser appears, and then there's Jack, who really comes out of his box in the correspondence, in the loser's lair, where Jack really comes out of himself and is himself truly. This is such a revelation of Joanne Rowling that she wants it to be experienced primarily imaginatively in its most powerful way. Parents reading to their children before it gets spoiled in being exteriorized in a Disney production like Pinocchio or Disney Snow White or Disney whatever. She doesn't want it to. Again, forgive me if I'm in what I hope is true and what I think is true, but I'm pretty sure Rowling's been offered a lot of money to put this thing on the screen, of some kind of screen. And if she has, Rowling's not indifferent. She has a lot of charitable projects she could use that money for. The fact that she hasn't, I think, is that she wants this thing to mature a little bit on the vine. She wants this thing to have a few people read it to their children first before it turns into something that they can only see through the pictures. I hope this thing goes much more to a children's book with much more illustrations before it goes to the big screen. It's such an important work. Seriously, I reread it like you for this podcast, and I was thrilled that it stood up. I mean, I had this idea that it was that good, and then rereading it, re-entering the land of the lost, I was as excited and thrilled and, wanting to, as soon as I was done, I wanted to go back. Once I was found, I wanted to go back to Lost. I wanted to just go through it again. It was that edifying. I had come out of I'm a John. I wanted to be the Jack in the Box. I wanted to be the guy coming out of the box. That was such a thrill to me that I'm hoping that Rowling is saying, I want readers to have that experience again and again and again before they plug this thing in. They get it streaming on Netflix or Amazon Prime Video or whatever. That they're going to see this thing in their hearts before they see it on a screen.
I want to give a shout out to the audiobook as well. The audiobook adaptation for Christmas Pig was my very first audiobook. So
my goodness.
I had never experienced, being the podcast addict that I am, I had never listened to an audiobook before the publication of Christmas Pig is the first one. And this is, I've now listened to quite a few audiobooks, but the production values of this one, of the Christmas Pig, it has a cast.
Yeah.
So there is a narrator and a full cast. It is excellently done. It is really excellently done. And likewise, re-listening to it for this podcast, a wonderful Christmas experience. I think if you're not a confident reader and you want to read it to your kids, play the audiobook. Play the audiobook for the family.
That's right.
It's a wonderful
as the father of 7, I know that if this had been available on audiobook, it would have been, whenever we got into a car, it would have been Christmas Pig. I mean, just the voice of, I don't know who the character, I don't know the actor's name, but whoever played the Blue Bunny, I mean, what masterful capture. When he's being drawn up on his light, he's begging Jeannie to take him. They don't want me. I mean, that voice, it just rings your heart. Okay, I mean, anyway, yeah, the audiobook on that is extraordinary. And again, it's when you have a book read aloud to you or you experience through your ear, that aural, A-U-R-A-L, there's a golden quality to it that you can't possibly get via screened images. It's just not something that will work that way. So I'm hopeful that she delays that as long as possible. As much as I want a Blue Bunny toy that, as you say, will only come out once Pixar gets hold of this. And I can imagine, Neil Blair saying, we got to get this thing up. I'm glad she's resisted that. I'm glad if she has, maybe Rowling is so poisonous now that Pixar and Disney aren't interested in this. Maybe that's the case.
I must say, I predicted both for the Ichabod and Christmas Pig fairly early adaptations, knowing how quickly Casual Vacancy had a TV movie adaptation. I was expecting fairly early adaptations for both of those, but there's not even been a hint, or even a hint of discussions. But it'll be interesting to see, how that develops. Surely it can't last for very long because they are both such great stories.
Well, again, you mentioned, you opened this conversation with saying it was the greatest year for Rowling obsessives. Really, you get Troubled Blood, the Ichabod, and Christmas Pig in such close order, right? But you have to remember that those were also that was the annus horribilis of Rowling's life, maybe. Her public life, at least, when she was being canceled and, people were calling for her rape, her murder, her, execution, the death of her family. This was insane what was going on in her life. And yet that was the greatest flowering of her artistic, life in terms of, just concentrated publication history. And you have to, again, for the annotated Christmas Pig, you have to mention that. You have to mention that this comes out at one of the darkest times of her life. And that she publishes this story then. Not only is it an explanation on why she wasn't picked up, also the Fantastic Beasts story that's going on at the same time. The troubles in getting the third part of that series put together. It's constantly delayed, not only because of COVID, but because Rowling had become radioactive to the fandom, the Harry Potter fandom. So, maybe that's it. Maybe it's not Rowling's resistance. Maybe Rowling's out there on the floor like, I wish I was turning down tens of millions of dollars. I haven't gotten a single offer on this thing. Maybe that's that. But Rowling seems to have recovered significantly from that. The transgender madness, with the COVID madness, is not behind us, certainly, but we're not seeing, the unquestioned transitioning of teenage boys and girls into their supposed opposites, really just their destruction, their mutilation. We're not seeing that anymore. Rowling, in a way, has won that point that you have to draw some lines here. So we'll see. I'm if that, whatever the reason, I'm glad, that this book has not made it to the animated status or whatever. This hasn't, that Snow White can only be imagined in terms of the 1930s Disney experience. That's sad. That's sad if that's the case. Anyway, I want to go back into the Blue Bunny, man. The Blue Bunny, Again, Rowling's baptizing or elevating this seemingly accidental experience in her life, but that his disappearance, if you will, from the story, his apotheosis in a way inside the books is so resonant with what Rowling is talking about when she talks about the real. When we see this in part 7 of Running Grave, where part 7 of, like all the parts of Running Grave, they're rings. And the center of part 7 is Carrie Gittins. the woman who carried the supposed Dayu to the water, to the beach, without permission. And Carrie breaks down in the interview with Robin and Strike in part 7. She really loses it. Just quote this, Carrie admitted something between a gasp and a cough and began to cry again. She rocked backwards and forwards, sobbing into her hands for a couple of minutes. When Robin silently mimed to Strike an offer of comfort to Carrie, Strike shook his head. Doubtless he'd be accused of heartlessness again on the return journey, but he wanted to hear Carrie's own words, not her response to somebody else's sympathy or ire. Okay? And that's important, that heartlessness here, because we're about to get the heart of Carrie Kittens, right? I've regretted it all my life. All my life, Carrie sobbed, raising her swollen-eyed face, tears still coursing down her cheeks. I felt like I didn't deserve Poppy and Daisy when I had them. I shouldn't have agreed. Why did I do it? Why? I've asked myself that over and over, but I swear I never wanted. I was young. I knew it was wrong. I never wanted it to happen. Oh, God. And then she was dead, and it was real. It was real. And real is italicized here. She's really putting emphasis on the real. What do you mean by that? Said Strike. What do you mean by it was real? It wasn't a joke. It wasn't pretend. When you're young, you don't think stuff like that happens. But it was real. She wasn't coming back. Now, she knows what really happened to Dayu. She knows that she didn't carry Dayu into the water, and that she died. She knows that it was real. This person was murdered. And she's so horrified for her children, she's basically coerced into suicide, by the actual killer inside the stories. I wouldn't want to ruin the story for anybody, Nick, right? No. All right. But that whole thing about it's real. I mean, they use the word real there 4 times, and Strike as if that wasn't enough. What do you mean by it was real? It's just real. And there's no way a Rowling reader doesn't remember, what Rowling said. She waited 17 years to write the lines of Harry and Dumbledore at King's Cross. Tell me one last thing, said Harry. Is this real, or has this been happening inside my head? Dumbledore beamed at him, and his voice sounded loud and strong in Harry's ears. The bright mist was ascending again, obscuring his figure. Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real? Okay, that's Rowling has said you can't understand the books unless you look along that line of sight. And I spent a lot of time in Deathly Hallows lectures exploring that. That is maybe the critical conversation in the entire 7-book series of Harry Potter. Okay, in Troubled Blood, which is, again, I think the halfway point is the middle of the entire series arc of the 10-book series. We get a fun reversal of the Potter-Dumbledore exchange at Skegness, where Robin and Corman are talking about astrology. You're being affected, Robin said. Everyone knows their star sign. Don't pretend to be above it. Strike grinned reluctantly, took a large drag on his cigarette, exhaled, then said, Sagittarius, Scorpio rising, with the sun in the first house. Robin began to laugh. Did you just pull that out of your backside, or is it real? Of course it's not fucking real, italicized, said Strike. None of it is real, is it? Okay? In Christmas Pig, at that scene outside the City of the Mist, we get the real again. Blue Bunny is talking to Christmas Pig and to Jack, and he can't figure out why they're trying to get into the City of the Mist. Do you just want to live in nice houses? Asked Blue Bunny. Or is there another reason you want to get in? Yes, said Jack before Christmas Pig could stop him. Somebody I need's in there. He's called DP, and he's my favorite cuddly toy. For a long moment, Jack and Bunny stared into each other's eyes, and then Blue Bunny let out a long sigh of amazement. You're a boy, he whispered. You're real. He isn't, said the panic-stricken Christmas Pig. He's an action figure called It's All Right, Pig, said Blue Bunny. I won't tell anybody, I promise. You really came all the way into the land of the lost to find your favorite toy? He asked Jack, who nodded. And that you really came? That has all sorts of rich meanings, you know. He says it to Jack, who nodded. Then I'll be your decoy, said Blue Bunny. It would be an honor. Okay? I mean, the bunny's simple declaration, you're real. In effect, from up there, the greater reality of the land of the living in which things have their awakening in the love of their owners, clarifies those other usages, right? Dumbledore shares his wisdom with Harry, the maternal love which saved him, first at Godric's Hollow and then in the forest, is the metaphysical substance behind, and within all other reality. Strike gives Robin a dose of his skeptical ignorance and nominalist first principle that nothing is real but surface appearance subject to measurement and physical sensation, mental grasp of all things being consequent to that. That's the turning point of the entire series, because that's what Strike is going to have to give up. That skeptical ignorance and nominalist first principle that nothing is real. And we see in Carrie Gittins her agony about the real, and she puts this specifically in relation to the birth of her two children. Right? That's what's real. Christmas Pig's real moment acts as a key to those others, one evident in the bunny's response to the revelation of Jack's greater ontological status. He does a Dobby. He offers to die for Jack as Jack has done in his descent into the land of the lost for DP, a surrender of self to near certain death in being given to the loser he considers an honor. He acts spontaneously and selflessly as a decoy, a saving replacement, in other words, for the living boy, as Dobby did for the boy who lived. The pathetic distraction that saves the DP rescue mission and mislaid, despite himself, crying out in desperation for his own existence, has metamorphized, consequent to his experience with Broken Angel and in Jack's example, into a heroic decoy that allows Jack and CP to enter the city of the mist. And the Blue Bunny makes out better than the house elf. This is the key event of the book, and the best evidence since the death of Lily Potter, Harry's defeat of Quirrell, and the demise of the Dark Lord, that mother's love is Rowling's default symbolism for Christian love in her writing. The bunny's choice to act as a decoy, his decision to die to his ego self, generates the life-saving appearance of maternal love and its equivalent in the transference attachment a child feels for a beloved toy. There's Rowling herself and her daughter that appear in the book. The Johannine quality of the light that shines down on him, on the bunny, from the finding hole, and his Elijah-esque elevation nails down that logos love correspondence. Okay? This is why Christmas Pig is Rowling's best standalone story, I think, is you're getting this thing in this concentrated form that you don't get almost anywhere else. I mean, this is, the answer to the skepticism that permeates our age, really. Genie here is John acting as something of a genie. She saves the Blue Bunny as his sacrificial love created the corresponding opening in the finding hole. This is in parallel with how Jack's thoughts of his mother created Crusher's opening to be up there. Because you remember when Jack and Christmas Pig are about to be destroyed by the big boot, in the city of Bother It's Gone. He's about to get captured there and Bother It's Gone. Jack reaches out to Christmas Pig and holds his hand and thinks, I won't be able to see my mother again. And Christmas Pig is inspired to say, hold on for the thing that's going to change all other things. And right then the sky opens up and this boot is the boot Crusher is the only thing inside all of the land of the lost that fights being saved, Okay. This shows all of the messianic traits for the Blue Bunny that Rowling said she invested in Harry Potter in her direct interview. Okay, and in case the readers miss these allegorical correspondence, one of the lost adjusters at the City of the Mist Gates uses the word saved as a synonym for the usual Land of the Lost term found. He says, what's the last time you saw a bit of surplus saved? Okay? The bunny's apotheosis allows Jack and CP to enter the gates and hide in a gondola beneath a thick velvet wrap, a dark blue velvet blanket. And we see velvet in Disposable, the saloon there, the moth-eaten velvet curtains. And you really do have to read Beatrice Groves' Christmas Pig article in the Rowling Library about the Velveteen Rabbit or how toys become real. But even without that, the first thing they encounter in the City of the Mist is happiness. Okay, and this is more blessedness than delight. This is not grins and giggles. I mean, her light and warmth, evidence of her radiant empathy for the two stowaways, and her vote in the Palace of Power, not to mention her relationship with Hope, mark her as another symbol of maternal Christic love. The Blue Bunny, a toy become real after meeting the real living boy, allows Jack and CP to enter the City of the Mist with happiness, who with Hope is the agent of their being lifted up in a tapestry, a work of art, out of the clutches of the loser's lost adjusters and power, and transported to paradise, the Isle of the Beloved. I mean, this is such a wow. We haven't talked that much about the whole Land of the Lost thing, but the correspondence here between grades of reality begin with the Logos, light, love, life and love of this world transcendent spiritual realm as its point of origin. Reflecting it directly and by parallel characters are the incarnation of Christ, and specifically his appearance on earth at Nativity, the night of miracles and lost causes. That's the setting of the whole book. The sacrificial love of Christ and his death on the cross and resurrection that beget in the loser's lair. The love a mother feels for her child. There's Rowling right there. Here I am. And the love a child feels for its transitional object, toy, post-attachment from mom, in which it feels something of that maternal love. You see all of this. This Christmas Pig is this Jack-in-the-Box story of a boy's explosive chrysalis and transformation. It's the best introduction to Rowling's work as a traditional writer of mythic, traditional allegory, which is to say psychomachy of the soul's journey to spiritual perfection. It's your imaginative experience of the real. That is what Rowling is after. And when Blue Bunny says, you're real, it's an honor to die for you because you're real, that's Rowling's word. I'm working, Patricio Tarantino is helping me do searches on real, which is very hard to do word searches on real inside Harry Potter and Strike and all these things, because do you know how many words begin with real? R-E-A-L, you got thousands of those. But this is, the gut of this story. I mean, so again, what's real in this story points to what is real in general, the heart of existence, and to what is unreal of our experience as human beings. If you like Stryker saying none of it's real, then you're on your journey with Cormoran Strike to get that. But for a lake reading A Christmas Pig, there's another meaning to real. Okay, and this is going to be a harder part than all the stuff that Rowling has testified to. I mean, what is the real correspondence here between life and story? This involves some inductive speculation, Nick, between Rowling's family life and this book. And we pointed to this. I, of course, have given away the game too much, but can you explain the process of inductive speculation as well as the connections between Rowling's marriages and her children and those we see inside Christmas Pig?
Okay, so a brief recap on when we talk about the lake and we talk about the shed. So this comes from Rowling's revelatory interview on the BBC a few years ago in the Museum of Curiosities, where she finally answered that perennial question, where do you get your ideas from? And she described in her head there is a lake in a forest with a shed. And the ideas that pop into her head, the inspiration, well, that's the lake. And then she takes these ideas and she fashions them. So she uses her skills as an author, as a spiritual being, to create the story in the shed. And when we talk in Hogwarts Professor about Lake and Shed, we talk about her artistry, which is the shed, is the chiastic structure, is the allegory, is the alchemy, and the lake is her inspiration. This is the literary allusions, and this is the biographic allusions within her work. So when we look at something like The Christmas Pig, the story centers around the things which she has admitted are her and her family's things. The story is based around the favorite toy of her son. So, of course, we look at the parallels between the mother of the story and the son, Jack, and Rowling and her son, David. And then we look at the other characters and we see how they can fit. So the story opens with the blended family. So this is a daughter and a father who join the mother and the son to create a new family, a blended family. And that doesn't quite fit with Rowling's family. So we know Rowling had a daughter, Jessica, and Jessica is 10 years older than David. Now we know Holly in the story is 11. The difference in ages between Jack and Holly is much, much less than the difference in ages between Jessica and David. But that being said, we know that not just in Christmas Pig, but in most all of her stories, there are threads, there are themes of sibling rivalry. In Cormoran Strike, usually to murderous effect. Now, we are not saying that there is some murderous sibling rivalry within Rowling's family, but it is a theme. So it is something that somewhere within her lake, be it life or literature, has Rowling thinking about sibling rivalry. If you listen to the voice of Holly in Christmas Pig, she is talking as a much older individual, as a much older sister than an 11-year-old to, say, a 7 or 8-year-old. This is almost a parental figure. I can imagine that voice being the voice of Jessica. I can imagine there being some sibling tensions within the Rowling family, and I can see J.K. Rowling using that as inspiration to help craft this story. Now, we need to be cautious. We can't take this too far. We can't say that this is absolutely demonstrating that there is internal family strife within the Murray household. We know from the acknowledgements that certainly at the point of inspiration for Christmas Pig, they were the 5 Murrays. They were a family unit. We know that Decker Rowling was used as a help for her logical critiquing of the logic of Christmas Pig for this story. We know she's on board for the story. I don't think there is any, or at least we have no evidence for there being some catastrophic sibling problem within the Rowling Murray family, but for sure, I know of no families where there is complete sibling harmony, where we can't draw on instances of sibling arguments. And I am convinced that a large part of that has been drawn on for inspiration for the Christmas Pig.
Wow. I mean, this is inductive speculation, and yet there's no feeling of stretching here. There's so much sibling rivalry, obviously, in Christmas Pig with children. And we have Rowling's testimony again from that 2019 interview on the BBC that, she takes stuff from her real life. We have all of our testimony about Christmas Pig saying this is all about my family's life. Really, if you object to that kind of speculation that, there almost certainly was a chrysalis experience for Jessica akin to what Holly experiences inside this book. And maybe it was around Christmas time. Who knows? Maybe it was around just her mother's marriage at Christmas time to Neil Murray. Who knows? We don't know. And when the annotated Christmas Pig is published in 2054, if we live that long, we'll probably know by then. But I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that, to argue inductively, speculatively, that this is what it's about, especially because not only do we have Christmas Pig, which, if Evan is right, is going to be the analog for Strike 10, but we have all the sibling rivalries, murderous rivalries, and Freudian family romances inside the Strike novels. They're really at the heart of the Strike novels. Many of the murders and almost all of the foundation crimes in each of the books is about sibling rivalry. It's there. It's there. So again, there's not much to make of that, other than to say this is where Rowling's get it. But it's a little bit like the Blue Bunny. The Blue Bunny, you get a blue stuffed toy, and blue being kind of the universal symbol for melancholy or sadness. You can even take it to despair, depression. And then the bunny, in forgive me, in modern symbolism, the bunny is only associated for holidays with Easter. And so Rowling has elevated that symbol to this character that starts out despairing. You meet the thing, it's just a pathetic figure being shoved down a chute into this thing. And then we meet it on the waste of the lamented, where he's offering real comfort to Broken Angel. That, Jack has also been part of the, he doesn't care about Broken Angel. He's not something, but by the Blue Bunny's example, he tries to save Broken Angel on that thing. And that's really the beginning of Jack's heroism and selflessness, is that he's right in the presence of a loser. He's trying to save Broken Angel. That's the signature change inside the thing. And Blue Bunny has been the agency of that. And then, when they're on their way to the city of the mist, Blue Bunny is the only one with the sight of all the things down below. He's the only one with the transformed vision that can see Jack for who he is, immediately recognize him, and connect the dots. I will die. I will sacrifice myself. The thing that he was so terrified of, back in Mislaid, he now embraces. He knows that those guards are going to capture him and give him to the loser or worse. And he runs for it because he has experienced the real. To sacrifice himself for what's real, he knows that's going to be his greater life. I mean, he may not know it consciously, but we shouldn't have been surprised really when the Blue Bunny ascends into heaven, basically, with this maternal love, because he's become an embodiment of it. This is the kind of fruit that process of lake to shed reading is, and it being tied to a crisis. Obviously, Rowling's daughter finding the Blue Bunny was not a crisis in her life, right? But Rowling's experience with her mixed marriage, that she's got a child from a different man inside this marriage, and that child's feeling lost, and yet she loves that child as much as she loves her children with the Murrays. The process of bringing Decca into the Murray family, clearly, and the context of her whole marriage, her relationship with Neil Murray, which has to have been, it is a remarkable achievement. I can't think of a much greater challenge for a man than to not be able to be a provider and a protector. That's the way men show unconditional, selfless, sacrificial love. That's the male normative biological thing. That's the way we show Christ-like love to others. And that's largely been taken out of Neil Murray's wheelhouse. He can't provide for a woman who's a billionaire, right? I mean, how does he do that? And how does he protect her when she pays for armed guard?
Popcorn and unasked for tea.
That's right. And that's a remarkable achievement that they've sublimated this somehow, that she can say that she never could have imagined being inside such a secure relationship with a man, that he does provide her with some kind of security and protection that she never imagined she would be able to enjoy inside her marriage. And that she talks about that wedding ring with having such power to her, that Neil Murray has done this. That's what I think, that achievement inside their marriage and inside their family and their children, that I think is where the strike novels are going. I mean, we see always in the conflict of, Robin's role, where she's lost the marriage already to this role. That she's taken on this masculine thing. It's part of the whole, Robin is sterile argument. But that for another conversation, right? I mean, this inductive speculation that we're making is key to getting the Lake and Shed artistry of the books. How she's making this not just about, as you said, a Mary Sue thing. But I think in the last podcast I called it a Mary Jane. Anyway, that Mary Sue element of this book is relatively, I don't want to say trivial, because it's like when you do a quadrigal reading, and you dismiss the surface story because you want to get to that anagogical sublime meaning or whatever. You don't get you don't get the moral, allegorical, and sublime readings except through the surface story. If the surface story doesn't grab you and engage you, you don't get any of those other meanings. They all have to come through that. It's like a cake and an icing. You don't get the cake unless you go through the icing. And if the icing looks, is unattractive, you're never going to find out how good that cake is. Well, Rowling's life aspects, what you call her life and literature elements, I'd call it her biographical and bibliographical thing, because I like longer words than you do, Nick. It's equally alliterative. That's the surface part of this story that you have to get through in order to really appreciate the achievement of what she's doing inside these books. But this is kind of the easy one, this inductive speculation. We're going to go other places with this inductive speculation eventually, but I want to put a marker down here that, if you accept this inductive speculation, that Rowling is talking about her children and their relationships and her husband and that kind of thing here, because it's in such high relief here inside the story of Christmas Pig. I hope that will help people, be a little less resistant to other speculation about things in Rowling's life that we see inside the stories, and then try to figure out how that was baptized inside the shed. I keep saying baptized. It's really elevated or transformed.
I think it's important as well for us to emphasize that this is a speculation. We think it's important speculation because we're picking up on themes that Rowling is writing about. So these are themes that are important to Rowling. We're only asking the question why. So what is it about these themes that make it so important for Rowling? What is it about sibling strife, sibling rivalry, arguments within families that is so important to her? And we're looking for reasons for that, either within her life or within the literature that we know she reads. So we're not inventing this. We're not inventing the themes. All we're doing is speculating about why these themes are so apparent.
Right,
and we could be wrong.
That's right. But I'm not sure I want to go that far. How can we be wrong, Nick? How can we be wrong? Says the man who thought that all of your speculation about there being a new book was madness. That really, though, I can see how Christmas Pig. One of the reasons I this is the second episode of our discussion about Rowling Studies that we put Christmas Pig right in here. It's not only this the seasonal thing, it's because in a way Christmas Pig acts as a key, if you will, to unlock everything inside Rowling's. I think that, obviously, I think that's true, and I think it will be the growing understanding of within Rowling Studies in the future. What we're trying to do at Rowling Studies, we said at the beginning of this episode, we're going to say at the beginning of every episode, is we're trying to think the way that Dickens, Shakespeare, and Joyce scholars do about those authors who have their subjects' life stories and complete works before them. I mean, we don't have Rowling's biography to read. She hasn't written one. She's definitely made it a subject of banishment for any friend that talks to anybody about her life story. And she's protective of her family, right? These are still very young people. So we don't get that stuff. But we are going to get that in the future. We're connecting the dots here between Rowling's family and this book, Christmas Pig, a connection that she points to, as you've laid out, Nick, and as future scholars will consider all this obvious. Okay? And this is, seriously, if you pick up any book by Dickens and you read the introduction to the book by Dickens, if you don't learn that he had a rough childhood, right, that introduction has really done you a disservice, because you're not going to understand why there are so many unhappy children, orphans, stranded children. I mean, that's what Dickens writes about. That's the core experience of his life, and how he raises that up inside story allegorically is the great gift, which is Charles Dickens. And the same thing is true for Shakespeare, for Joyce, for it's what literary critics do when they know enough about an author. Is you go there. That's not the personal heresy on a couple of levels. One, Rowling's invited us to do this. She's basically anticipating this, and especially with Christmas Pig, she just laid out all the correspondences with her own life. And we don't, as you said, we don't know all of them. We don't know about the scissors that she lost. We don't know about all these, but they're there clearly. We don't know about which one of her children had to use an inhaler at some point, which I assume is the case. That we're anticipating that. And if we make mistakes, we ask your forgiveness. But I don't think we're responsible if we simply continue to do what we've always done with Rowling, which is just focus on the latest book and look at the next one. It's time to see not only the works as a whole, pretend that her best work is behind her, and to read those books in light of her life and her library or literature, that her biography, her bibliography, that's how you have to do this. But you got to get into the shed, Nick. You got to go into the shed. And that's when we have to talk about I've written a whole series of posts at Hogwarts Professor, the weblog, about the perennialist reading in Christmas Pig, and it's the heart of my PhD thesis. Not Christmas Pig per se, but all of Rowling's work. And I'm not going to, give you the sublime stuff. We got to save something for an Easter reading of Christmas Pig or next year's reading of Christmas Pig. But you've really got you're not going to get Christmas Pig and why it's so profound and works without the key allegory of it. The reality being up there rather than down here. Jack's Land of the Lost is Plato's cave. It's our world in this temporal life, what C.S. Lewis described as the Shadowlands. Every lost thing from this view is a more realistic depiction of our human existence than our day-to-day profane understanding of our life in this world. Strikes, view of nothing is real. In the subcreation in which the loser and his servants are the ruler and the agents of his law, respectively, we are meant to see fallen existence, which is to say Satan's realm and all the cutting, divisive instruments of evil and of power in our world. What in Rowling's predominant metaphor is as I talked about earlier, is the Petrine dimension of human life, the law. Reality in the Land of the Lost is not in the experience of mislaid, its three cities, or the waste, all of which are temporary unless the loser consumes a thing, but up there, up there, the superlunary world of light and love, a much greater plane of existence from which everything is made, which is to say it has its origin, and to which, except in perverse cases like the hobnailed crusher, all created things long to return. Just as Lunchy looks longingly up to the finding hole in the disposable saloon in hope of light descending to claim her, to save her, so the things of the land of the lost all have as their natural and correct orientation an otherworldly focus and a consequent disdain of sorts beyond their fear of the loser for the station in life and world in which they find themselves. They don't want to be down there. They want to be up there. This is, to risk insulting our listeners, perhaps by pointing out the obvious, a story depiction of the traditional or theocentric understanding of man in the world, in which man is an image of God, a shadow of his greater self, an iconic quality most evident in his soul. He's created by the word of God, his logos, and having something of this creative aspect of the light of the world within him. That's from the prologue to John. Man's purpose and destiny via the Creator's design is to live intentionally in hope and happiness, to foster both his communion with up there via the creative principle of selfless love, and in this to ensure his return to the world of light above the shadowlands of this temporal life. Rowling, in this charming Christmas story, smuggles the traditional idea of human life and its origin and end in God through Christ past the sleeping dragons of our de facto atheist age and its myriad lost adjusters. The law adjusters are all around us, man. They're policing the internet. They're everywhere. If that weren't enough, we have specifically Jax being a second Dante, traveling through the Commedia's three dimensions, which is to say an explicitly Christian allegory of the soul's journey to perfection in the spirit, with his guides, the Christmas pig, Der Pig, and Santa as parallels to Dante's Virgil, Beatrice, and St. Bernard, as Evan Willis gave us. Jack journeys from the agonies of this life in the forest dark, the straightforward path having been lost, to the beatific vision of salvific, sanctifying, spiraling light, the white rose beyond paradise. This end is prefigured in Christmas Pig by the snow which swirled against the blackening sky outside his window while Jack waited for the house to fall completely silent, the night he enters the land of the lost, as well as by his experiences with Der Pig, Mum, and the recycling bin. Just as Rowling told direct she had done with Harry Potter, though, this Christian everyman and his hero is given certain messianic traits quite deliberately. Jack saves the things in the loser's lair, and by extension, all things in the land of the lost, by being that person who descended from heaven in love for fallen creation, objects his love brought into their enlivened or animated existence. He becomes their means to escape death and the loser's dominion by becoming the locus of their hope and faith of their greater life. Jack, unlike Dante and his vision of the white rose, becomes the cause of the spiraling light that literally lifts up the least of things, the surplus refuse, into the up there of heaven. The loser's anger with the things who cry out, "Not the boy!" is the story figure of the Petrine voices of this world that want all believers in God's love to despise their Creator and any longing they feel for him as childish, what properly should be hatred of the absolute as the cause of their current condition. Again, for future shows, we'll talk about all the Christ figures inside the story, right? Obviously, Jack's not the only one, just as Harry Potter is only the principal one in his series. A replacement, to put down a marker, is akin to a ransom, a la the Space Trilogy character, in being a redeeming sacrifice to make good on a failing, a kind of payment to make atonement, especially with respect to the Blue Bunny and his resurrection experience. To put down just another marker here, as I want to close the Christmas Pig's allegorical dimension, the Christmas setting of the story, as with the Nativity of Christ, has its root power not in the birth of the Savior, essential as Jack's incarnation as a thing by his choice to descend into the lesser realm to save DP is, but the Paschal or the Easter symbolism of the book. Christ becomes a man that man might become God, according to Athanasian formula. Christ is born on the night of miracles and lost causes, so the incarnate Logos will in the end die without sin, beguiling the beguiler, right? Read your Beatrice Groves. And thereby, by doing this, he becomes the means in that death and return to life, not to mention his harrowing of hell, the despoiling of Hades. He becomes the means to the human potential for eternal life as members of his mystical body, his risen mystical body. It is this membership that the loser apes in his plastering the dismembered remains of the things from whose bodies he has sucked the alive bit to his exterior self, his Luciferian mechanistic body. Easter is the heart of Christmas Pig, right? I mean, this is such a powerful Christian allegory. I could go on, and I have gone on and on. If you want to read the quadrigal reading of Christmas Pig, it's posted at Albert's Best. You can get all the psychomachia reading about what happens inside, the confrontation with King Power, about all the faculties of soul that are represented and what hope and faith are. I mean, I've done that. I'm not going to do that here. We're already way over time, I think, already. But I do want to talk about one symbol specifically that people probably still, maybe not. Yeah, people take down their Christmas trees right around New Year's. I don't know when people take down in the UK. What's the story with Christmas trees in the UK?
It depends. We're getting more and more like America. So very traditionally, the decorations should go up on Christmas Eve.
Yay!
Remain up for the 12 days of Christmas, and then shortly after New Year is taken down again. More and more, you will see. It's still fairly rare to see decorations before December, but usually 1 or 2 weeks into December, most people will have their decorations up.
Yeah, well, we're still way ahead of you, Nick. We're getting back to Halloween now with Christmas trees. But seriously, yeah, you're right. The tradition is the tree may be up, but it's not decorated until Christmas Eve. Then the 12 days of Christmas, which bring us to Theophany and Photismos, or enlightenment, the baptism of Christ. So I hope people, if you get this up promptly, Nick, you put our Christmas, big tree up before New Year's. Maybe people still have their Christmas trees up. The most important, perhaps, and certainly the most neglected of Rowling symbolism inside Christmas Pig is the symbol of the tree. Rowling has used this before in her work. It's the symbol of the world axis, the vertical image of reality with its invisible chthonic roots and multiple states of being living in correspondence, visible in its branches. Sorry, that's symbolism 101, the tree, right? That vertical image. The Christmas tree, almost always a pine tree with a neat, near uniformity spiraling outward and downward from the star or angel at the top, which represents superlunary reality, is especially powerful in this role, hence its association with nativity, the descent and appearance in the created world of the Word or Logos of God. Rowling situates the entire Christmas Pig story around and beneath the Christmas tree in Jack and Judy's home. It's Holly's knocking down of the tree, which, I have my own conspiracy theory about that she didn't. I mean, it's mysterious. Accomplished gymnasts, as a rule, don't lose their balance when standing on a chair, right? But I think she knocked it down when she had to cover the fact that the toilet paper roll thing had been chewed up, and she'd thrown it down, trying to put her own toy at the top. I mean, that her knocking down on the tree, though, brings on the inciting incident of DP's defenestration, right? Without the tree coming down, we don't get the trip to get another angel. Jack and CP are then lost beneath the tree. The first chapter in The Land of the Lost is titled Beneath the Tree, in case you missed that, right? Though the tree itself is never mentioned in that chapter. And Jack returns to the land of the living through the portal of the tree, thanks to Santa's shaking of the tree to find broken angel. Okay? The tree is the central symbol of Christmas Pig, because its primary message and story is that the visible, tangible world of everyday existence, the horizontal realm, is not the only or the primary level of being. Jack and CP's descent from beneath the tree, akin to broken angels from the tree top, and any angelic messenger, the Greek angelos means messenger, any angelic messenger to our world from above, this is a revelation of a hierarchical universe in which greater realities that create and inform the lower with their being and meaning exist above them. Jack and CP's adventures down below, beneath the tree, is a revelation of life properly lived. That is, seeing created, sensible existence as a shadow dependency on the eternal love above us up there that gives temporal life its substance. I mean, Rowling has done this again before. She did this in Harry Potter. She's doing it again in Cormoran Strike. The Deathly Hallows symbol is interpreted at the 4 levels of meaning by various characters in the Hogwarts saga, but its most sublime depth is revealed to Harry in the barrier of Aleister Moody's Mad Eye. Each of the symbol's 3 parts, symbols unto themselves, are in play there. The eye is the circle. She calls the symbol, the Deathly Hallows symbol, a triangular eye several times. The cross Harry inscribes on the tree is the mirror quality of that symbol's left and right aspects. And the old gnarled oak tree, in the shadow of which Harry buries the eye, is the world axis, the vertical line in the symbol. And see Deathly Hallows lectures for much more on that, okay? And I've discussed at Hogwarts Professor the importance of oak trees in the Strike series, which is embedded in the names of the Zeus and Hermes figures of those books, Johnny Rokeby and Carl Oakton, both of whose names are about the oak tree. The tree, that world axis, in a way, is a symbol of symbolism because it's the representation of the essence of traditional understanding, not a dreary otherworldliness, but a worldview that grasps that the visible world is not self-generating or explicable apart from a greater reality. Our existence is informed or enlivened by a level of being beyond our own. It's a vertical perspective that the tree, and especially the Christmas tree, represents. It's an icon decorated with lights in most cases of the word's self-revelation. The light of the world become man, a visible, tangible, sacrificial condescension to demonstrate the love from above that informs creation and providing the means to join oneself to him and escape the loser, right? We're all trying to escape the loser. The traditional worldview has 3 essential signatures. Let's go through them. It has an ontologically vertical orientation, correspondences that reflect the lower realm's dependence on the higher, and the human noetic capacity, this cardiac intelligence, to perceive the reference of these greater realities in their symbolic representatives on this plane. The tree is the symbol of the hierarchy of being, the ground of this worldview, hence its central place and function in Christmas Pig. The land of the lost is an allegorical representation of this world. The land of the lost seems to be the fantasy world, but it's really Rowling's depiction of this world that we experience, properly understood. It's the loser's domain, just as our own is ruled by the delusions of Satan the deceiver. The lost adjusters are his willing servants who insist on the law being kept rather than justice served, whose correspondents are the Peter institutions and the lackeys of this world. In this land of the lost, however, every axiological measure is about the love from above. As the ticket-dispensing tin opener explained to the haughty earrings in Mislaid, still probably my favorite characters, those earrings. Diamonds or plastic, it's all the same down here. We'll soon know how much you're worth up there, right? It's basically how much love you're worth. The lost adjusters at allocation and Mislaid have a list of lost objects from which they read a judgment of that worth up there that decides anything's assignment to areas roughly corresponding to hell, purgatory, and heaven. This judgment is conditional, however, on anything's continuing to be lost. When found up there and appreciated, light appears from a finding hole in the ceiling of the world down there that draws that lost object back into the greater reality of the land of the living. Rowling is basically saying, she's not urging people to live in fear of the judgment of the allocators, right? She's urging people to identify themselves with sacrificial, unconditional, selfless love as men and women do that, and that will bring them into contact with the greatest reality human beings can know, that reality that brings them into existence.
Just a pure joy, John. It really is.
And again, we're not just skimming the surface. There's important stuff in there, but until you get to the city of the mist and the Isle of the Blessed or whatever, you're just really beginning to get what she's about here. I want to talk about Rowling's life again. I want to take this back to the lake, right? We've had our time in the shed there. People maybe feel they just got whipped in the shed here, right? This golden thread that runs through Rowling's work is this Christ-like love of a mother for her children. It's really where she lives, I think, as an artist. And we don't need to do inductive speculation for this, right? I mean, what is the link to Rowling's life experience about a mother's love for her children?
Well, I think that's foundational, and admittedly so as well. From the earliest of Rowling's interviews, that the presence or absence of a mother's love for a child is central. With the exception of her father reading Wind in the Willows when she had measles, it was Anne Rowling. It was Anne who read to her as a child. It was Anne's love of literature and books led to Rowling's life ambition of becoming an author herself. Anne, who died at that most pivotal of moments. So Jo had just started writing Harry Potter, the life-changing book. She just started plotting that, and Anne passes away. It's her child, Jessica, and Jo's love for Jessica that gave Jo the strength to survive her disastrous first marriage, and also the strength to survive through that, not just survive it, but to have the strength to complete the Philosopher's Stone, to find an agent, find a publisher, and finally set herself up to become the person that she is. Jo has said many times that if her mother had not died when she had, Harry Potter would have been a very different book. I think if Jo had not had Jessica when she did, I think Harry Potter would have been a very different book. But I think that's true for all of her works. It's that love that she found from her mother. It's the loss of that love when her mother died, and it's the love she found with her daughter, and subsequently her husband and her other children is the foundation for Rowling's life. And as I've already said, her life is at least 50% of her inspiration, of her lake work in her books.
What about her philanthropic endeavors too? I mean, we're talking about that this maternal love informs her artistry, her vocation as a writer. Doesn't it also inform all of her charitable work as well?
I think it does, because I think that love for a mother and that mother's love for a child is absolutely central to what she's been doing with Lumos. That is all about the harms that can come to a child when they are deprived of that familiar, that mother's love. All of her work with single parent families, the direct support that she's given through her Volant charity to mothers and families that are in distress, principally in Scotland. But the work now that she's doing in terms of feminism and the Beera's Place shelter, which is for women who suffer domestic violence, to be given counselling and support and shelter away from men, is all based around that love of a child for a mother and a mother's love for a child.
I just realized this. Maybe it's implicit in what you said, but I'll make it explicit. Is that the Volant? What's the actual name of her MS research?
So she has funded the Anne Rowling Regenerative Neurology Clinic. I think I've got that right. Anne Rowling Regenerative Neurology Clinic.
But there's also, but this is underneath a grouping in her charities. It's called Volant something, isn't it?
Yeah. So her main charities are split in two. So of course the biggie is the Lumos Foundation, which is her charity, and she is still very much involved with a strategy and administration for that. Things like the Anne Rowling Regenerative Clinic, once the money has been donated by J.K. Rowling, then it's pretty much hands off. And then there's the Valance charity. Now, the Valance charity was her very first charitable foundation, and it was largely a mechanism to cope with the many, many begging letters that she received when she was newly wealthy. So this has, initially it was set up so that people who knew about charitable endeavors could intelligently answer those letters. So where is money worth sending? Where is it not worth sending? And now it is an umbrella for that and many other causes that she is interested in. So it is a grant-giving foundation. So if you are principally within Scotland and you are in need of charitable assistance, then you can approach Valance with a reason for why you would be a good candidate to receive charitable assistance. It's targeted giving principally for families and mothers and children who are in need of assistance.
I see the correspondence there. It's hard to miss that, right? That's essentially a mother's love here. That she has resources and she's going to care for people that need those resources. I was thinking more about the research, though, that specifically that MS research is so that other children, someday won't experience what she experienced at the death of her mother. That they'll be able to enjoy their mother's love throughout their life, rather than experience the cathartic, catastrophic agonies of the death of a parent.
Absolutely, and I think that was an offshoot from Edinburgh University. Rowling had been involved in MS charitable giving for a long time, and that was largely in support of people who suffer from MS. And I understand that this was a team of academics from Edinburgh University actually approached Rowling with a pitch. And the pitch was, maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but this is a solvable problem. We can make this go away. All we need to do is find out what are the mechanisms. And it was based on the back of that pitch. And really it's substantial. So in many tens of millions of pounds in two very large lump sums Rowling is given to endow this research institute to do what they do.
Well, if one doubts that maternal love is the beating heart of Rowling's work, is the go-to and primary symbol of Christ inside her books, which are loaded with symbols of Christ. Rowling's charitable efforts, as well as her testimony and interviews about the importance of her experience as a mother and as a child of a loving mother, I think make that pretty hard to. That's a hard argument to make. I can see people resisting these ideas because they don't jump off the page at you, but it's almost, I think, at the point where it'd be like reading Dickens and not saying, boy, there's a lot of unhappy children inside here, right? I mean, what's going on inside here with all these kids? That Rowling's core identity is as a mother. And that's going to be very interesting because obviously Robin Ellicott, for serious strikers out there, Robin Ellicott is conflicted about whether she'll be a mother. That's going to be an issue. I think the last 3 books are going to turn on that reading. I just real quickly here before we speaking of serious strikers, there's a strike moment inside Christmas Pig, right? Which is really weird, right? I mean, you don't expect for there to be maybe a fairly open and critical marker that Rowling puts down at a high drama moment in Christmas Pig. We get a named character from Cormoran's Strike. I mean, this isn't like Rowena, Robin. Robin takes the name Rowena. I think it was Louise Freeman who joked that if we don't get if nobody inside Cormoran's Strike hears Rowena and doesn't say Rowena Ravenclaw, we're never going to get a reference to Harry Potter inside these books. Louise, as usual, is spot on. But I mean that
Ivanhoe, right? We get the Ivanhoe reference.
The Ivanhoe reference, yeah, right, because that's right on the tip of everybody's tongue. We don't get references between series. I mean, obviously we've got the entire parallel series thing. I mean, Rowling doesn't actually have to say Harry Potter to get a lot of the whole area. I mean, I think there's a whole section of Strike fandom now that is just consumed by parallel series ideas. It is fun. It is fun. I mean, as the person who first spotted it, I can say that, right? But we don't get names. We don't get names. But in Christmas Pig, we get a Cormoran Strike name. One that we were talking about. Is this the segue from episode 1 of our series?
That's the obvious link between episode 1 and episode 2 of Rowling Studies. I'm sure everyone spotted it.
Yeah. Well, you go ahead. You go ahead and reveal this. Who talks about a Cormoran Strike character inside Christmas Pig?
So this is Memory, who is a strange character.
Oh.
Who recalls her sister,
her mistress's sister.
Her mistress's sister. That's right.
Because Memory doesn't really have her own memories. She belongs to her mistress. And again, this is kind of a weird character, right? I mean, you're just like, Vain Beauty is just his own. He doesn't think about anybody else's beauty. He's his own beauty. But Memory is somebody else's memory.
Yeah.
I had a bit of an argument with Patricio about this one because he thinks that we can't count on. He thinks that memories are accurate, and I'm saying no. That Memory's memory comes up with all these years. 68 years ago, my mistress's sister. That those numbers are just what an adult person does to make it seem like they actually remember things in detail, but they really have totally lost the thread, right? I mean, they're just.
Well, we know the memory is lost, don't we? So
that's a given.
But that's not to say that the memory that was lost was any good before it was lost. I guess.
Yeah, I guess when it's finally really lost, then you get its condition when it was lost, right? That's good.
So we have the Sister Amelia, and we were talking about Sister Amelia in the last episode with our crazy theory that Charlotte Campbell was murdered. So is this? Do you think, John, this is Charlotte Campbell's memory?
I mean, it's a fascinating thing. Amelia is mentioned 3 times by Memory. And I'm going to have to do this from my poor memory. I haven't got this right at hand. But Amelia Louise, which is fascinating to me because my wife's middle name is Louise. It's just like, oh, Rowling is doing it again. She's got John all over the place here. Now she's got Louise. No, please don't send us notes saying, John, you don't go all Gilderoy on us here any more than you normally do. Amelia Louise is a wonderful name because it scans. It's antiquated. It's not a common name. I hope people begin naming their children Amelia Louise after this. But Memory talks about Amelia, her mistress's sister, and there's problems there. This is the older sister talking about the younger sister, one assumes. And the first instance that Memory shares is about a pig. And her memory is of her sister breaking the piggy bank that belongs to her mistress. Not a happy thing. Shouldn't be doing that, right? And we have a clear correspondence in that with the Cormoran Strike things, if you're willing to go there. In that Amelia Crichton is, a shopkeeper. She's an upscale shopkeeper, but she's still got a business that she has to run. And Charlotte, I don't know where Charlotte, because they share both parents. So it's not like Charlotte has money that Amelia shouldn't also have. Amelia's, in the store, in Running Grave, Charlotte is dating a billionaire, right?
And she's just got divorced, or is it in the process of being divorced from the Earl of Croy?
Right. I mean, she's got money. And Amelia probably wants a piece of that money, and I think she has to be hoping that if Charlotte had really hooked up successfully, I mean, isn't she engaged to this guy, or there's rumors of engagement, that Charlotte's going to come into some absolutely major money, and then Charlotte blows it. Charlotte decides to attack this guy, cut open his face. I mean, there's a reason for anger there. She's broken the piggy bank. That of all piggy banks, the goose that laid the golden egg here, Charlotte has managed to strangle it. You can see Amelia being a little angry there. Well, anyway, so there's the first reference that you can see Amelia Louise being a problem there. And then the second one, I believe the memory is that Amelia Louise, her mistress's sister, lies. Well, I mean, I think it's Strike that says that Charlotte has the ability, that Charlotte only lies when she's breathing. That this is a, if her lips are moving, she's lying. And one has to wonder if Amelia doesn't also have that congenital gift, of being able to lie shamefacedly, and that we don't know anything about Charlotte's death.
I think if Amelia does tend to the lie, then I don't think it would ever be shamefacedly. So she exudes competence and confidence.
That's right.
I think she would be a much more accomplished liar if that's what she's doing.
Well, she certainly, Strike accepts everything she says. Now, that's largely because, as I argued in our last episode, Strike is totally on board with suicide Charlotte. And this is a correction here, Nick. I'm going to correct you here. You said this is our theory. This is your theory, in which all the rest of us have tagged on to, whatever. None of us saw this, but I think you're right. But anyway, this is your theory. I'll take blame for it in that I'm really behind it. But seriously, this is your insight. Okay, so in the third thing that Amelia Louise talks about is that years ago. So we had 85 years ago, she owned a piggy bank, and then she was caught lying 80 years ago, and then the movie night was 69 years ago, and they went to see The Fugitive. There's no way we can do that. There's a television series for The Fugitive in 63. I guess you could make that work somehow with 69 years ago. That the movie adaptation, the Harrison Ford one, I think is 93. Anyway, it's where that comes from, we don't know. Okay, I'm not sure what to do with that. In terms of them going to see The Fugitive. But if I had to bet the farm, if I had to say, okay, here's all my chips forward, I would say that it's going to be something we learn in Strike 10. Right, that maybe Strike is a fugitive from the law and he has to prove his innocence. That would be what Rowling is giving us in Memory's reference to Amelia. That maybe somehow Amelia, I mean, obviously we're just spitballing here. Maybe Amelia lies to the press and sets up Strike as Charlotte's murderer. Oh well, whatever.
I know we're just spitballing here, but I'm gonna pin my flag to the mast here and say, if any of this pans out, even in the slightest, this is Olympic level foreshadowing. I mean, not just in a prior book series, in an unrelated children's book.
Seriously, there's an author named Dan Simmons, that one of my favorite writers. I've read almost everything he's written. I've read almost all of his standalone books, and he does this. Stephen King does this as well. Makes references to characters from other books that really seemingly have no relationship to the book that you're currently in with that thing. Okay, and that's a wonder. That's an absolute delight when you're a fan of the author. Rowling says that she began thinking about this book in 2012 when she was in the heart of her planning of the Strike series. Come on, Nick. I love the idea of her saying, Amelia is lying. It's about the piggy bank, and we're going to see Strike on the run as a fugitive. And I'm going to drop those three memories in here. When everybody is discounting, beauty, vanity is saying, forget about your crazy memory, It just seems like she's an old lady that doesn't, maybe she's having memory issues, right? Who knows? Maybe she's afraid of growing old. She's at that age. But anyway, she puts in this character maybe the clue to what's going to happen inside Cormoran Strike. I love it. I guess I want to close here, not with Memory and Amelia, though I love that whole thing. I want to close with Christmas Carol, right? I'm gonna say it again. This is perhaps her greatest achievement. A miniature. It's her shortest work ever. This is briefer than Philosopher's Stone or the Ichabod. Okay, it's got a cameo of her most important themes. It's her most sophisticated artistry and the most powerful meaning about life, art, and faith. This is a concentrated introduction to everything that serious readers love about the world's most popular writer. Owen Barfield is supposed to have said about C.S. Lewis that everything he thinks is evident in anything he writes. Everything that Rowling does is present in Christmas Pig. Okay? And Christmas Pig is a Christmas story, in the genre. In the Dickensian tradition of such things, he wrote 21 Christmas stories in addition to Christmas Carol. But I think, like the best of these, it really isn't about nativity in any exclusive sense, any more than Christ's incarnation or birth were the end game of his temporal life, as I've talked about. I mean, while Christmas in the U.S. has largely been co-opted by capitalist forces and consumer custom to become the most celebrated holiday, nativity in the traditional church ranks beneath Pascha, Easter, but also beneath Pentecost, Theophany, and the Annunciation, right? Easter is the feast of feasts among the Orthodox, the center of the annual calendar, and the model after which every Sunday liturgy is celebrated. I mean, the Russian word for Sunday is resurrection. After 80 years of an atheist regime, they had to say, the Atheist Youth League is meeting on resurrection. It's just. In America, Easter, I love this. I don't love it. It's terrible. But in America, Easter ranks beneath Halloween and Valentine's Day in the ranking of holidays people celebrate. I mean, can you believe that? I mean, anyway, I will risk being accused once more of sermonizing, this being the season, to say that what importance Christmas has is in its paschal content and meaning. This is true of Christmas Pig as well. Christ's birth is celebrated because it is the appearance of the Lord's incarnation, right? It's made visible, right? This is the Logos' sacrificial descent from heaven to becoming the atoning sacrifice at Pascha and our means as human beings to eternal life. We're going to escape from the land of the lost here, right? Rowling inserts this most clearly in Christmas Pig via the Blue Bunny side story and the sacrificial choices made by CP and by Jack. First by Pajama Boy's decision to enter the land of the lost, and then by his surplus-saving work in The Loser's Lair, his harrowing of Hades. I mean, I've talked about Blue Bunny, and we've jumped around here like a scared rabbit. How's that? That works, right? But that the bunny plays such a central role, and that Rowling has used rabbits as Easter symbols in Troubled Blood, and perhaps as early as her first work, rabbits. All that makes me conclude that this possible message is at the heart of her Christmas story. A rabbit's fecundity makes it an apt symbol of Easter, abundant life with eternal life, especially when paired with chocolate, which, as I've talked about, in the UK has an inner light Quaker message in the nougat, right? As we have it from both Rowling's discussion of toys as magical, transitional objects and her testimony about the treasured plush turtle made by her mother and its consoling, unchanging reality, those are all her words. She's being explicit here, as she has not been since the beginning, middle, and end of Harry Potter, that a mother's unconditional, selfless, and sacrificial love is her go-to symbol for the otherworldly love that is our hope for victory over death, even hope itself, right? Her insertion of herself and her daughter in this story at the point of Blue Bunny's rescue is a fun marker that this part of the book really happened. But also, I think this is what her books are really about, what they aim to do. Christmas Pig rose out of Rowling's late, no doubt, in answer to her own digestion of the challenges of a blended family and of being the main provider and public face of the Murray clan. She has elevated that inspiration, though it remains an important part of the story's surface and moral layers, to her usual allegorical and sublime heights, a psychomachia journey of the soul in its transformation in spirit and elision with Logos and its symbol of a mother's love. For anyone who's listening to this, who finds him or herself on the wastes of the lamented, on this feast of the Lord's Nativity, or its after Mass in the 12 days of Christmas, I hope that the allegory of the Blue Bunny and its possible meaning is a source of some consolation to you, as it has been to me. Whether our mothers were loving or not, we all know that such an absolute love exists on this plane of reality, and in the transcendent realm of which our world is only a reflection. God bless us, everyone, as Tiny Tim observed, and may he grant us to know and incarnate his love in our lives and hearts as a guarantee of our victory over death. Merry Christmas, Nick, and thank you for your fellowship and for the time we spend together exploring Rowling's artistry.
Merry Christmas to you, John. Thank you, and that was beautiful. We will be back with everyone in a fortnight or 2 weeks' time. If you have any questions for us, please do drop a message either at the Hogwarts Professor Substack, or you can ask a question at the Rowling Studies website.